So it is, it's an interesting time of year where, things are not real normal, but I did get to do a couple of things. Yesterday, I spent a good long time with Chief Stevens doing a ride-along that we've been talking about for a while. And so we were together during the earthquake and got to experience all of our phones going off in the cruiser at the same time, which was very exciting, although we did not feel it at all, the earthquake at least. I also attended, like I said last time, I was saying I was going to go to a meeting with some dental folks. And what we really talked about was the need and kind of a concerted effort in finding one oral surgeon who can come and be in Humboldt County and address dental patients. So we have great need for all kinds of dental services, but right now we have one specific goal, and that is to get somebody who can come and address the oral surgeon needs, which are really important. And one of the things that I talked about with Chief Stevens yesterday as well was the dental health of our homeless community. So we were thinking that maybe we'd add that to the point in time count, talking about chronic pain and how many are suffering with either dental health or foot health or headaches, and that to better identify and talk about the need. I will say it was not, the public health nurses that were there were pleading. I mean, they were just desperate for help. And the folks from the Delta Dental, who are supposed to be recruiters, were felt like they had very few tools in their quiver to help us. And so it was a good meeting to talk about our needs, and it was a frustrating meeting to talk about really how big the gap is between what our needs are and what is available to help us. So those conversations will continue. And then finally, on a very nice note, I hope everybody is enjoying the holiday lights all over. I think that tonight or tomorrow night, okay, the 23rd is the last night to vote for your favorites. So get out there, check out the homes. You could go to our website and vote for your favorite. It's something you could even do in the rain, which is a great activity. So thank you everybody for participating and decorating your houses. You are helping to make Eureka more beautiful and make this holiday a little brighter. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you. And with that, I'll move on to our next item of business, which is public comment.
Mayor,
Yes, sir?
would you like to do the pledge?
Oh my goodness. Yes. It is on here. I just skipped it. Thank you. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Skipped right over it. So now we are at the public comment period. Public comment period is for people who want to speak on items that are not on the agenda.
I do have a gentleman online.
Speak up, it's hard to hear you through that mask.
We're working on getting it turned up. Can we get it turned up a little bit?
Turned up as high as it goes. I think
Okay.
we need to bring the outside audio is great. It's just internally, and I've got it turned up as high as it goes.
Okay. Well, this is the time for people who would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda. Is there anybody here who would like to speak on public comment? And we will get, since we have the person on Zoom's hands up already, we'll go ahead and take that one.
Sir, you're on Zoom, 496-7454, if you would like to start.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Kent Sawatsky. I have not been involved in Eureka politics for a while, but I'm speaking at this meeting. There's some things that are important to me. So Susan Seaman, I always appreciate your communication on Mondays. And that's a wonderful thing when you can have a chance to talk to people and to get calls back and communicate. Communication is always king. As people know, I spend a lot of time in the supervisor's chambers, and some people refer to me as Sicario Politico, which in Mexico, in other words, I know who's going to be the governor next time. The governor is going to be elected for the president of Mexico. Also have a hand on politics in the United States as far as my perception of who will be our next president. So, but I also do play in the supervisor's chambers, and this is very important to me. I want people in there that are honest, will communicate with the public, will take phone calls, will be transparent. And that's what I've asked of anybody. And my understanding is 2 of you are running against Virginia Bass. I think it's District 4. I've spoken with both the candidates. And my concern is some political maneuvers that might be done here. And I have great concern. I've seen one supervisor in his 3rd district, Mike Wilson, involved in certain maneuvers. And I would have a concern if anybody would participate in any way, shape, and form of, let's say, Virginia Bass resigning halfway through her next year here, and then getting the supervisors to go ahead and bring forward a name out of the pot to pick from there, and bring that to the governor to be put in that chair. So those kind of maneuvers, I think, are totally disingenuous, and hopefully nobody will participate in that. I'm not going to name any names of who might be. It's always nice to, have a conversation with the people who are running for this position. It's always interesting to watch how these electoral things happen coming out of your district, and representation is great. I did also wish to do a little shout out for Miles. It's great working with Miles there. You're very lucky to have him. I had his back, I think, on the first round when you put the other guy in there. Still continue to, and I've not lost any confidence in Miles as far as running your ship there. So anyway, that's a little bit of perspective coming from my end regarding supervisory positions and what it takes to be elected. So it's always a pleasure to speak with. I spoke with Kim last thing I spoke with there, and I will be looking at people and vetting them. And one person I offered the chair to twice and didn't accept that. And that always, I like someone who's got the I guess you could say cojones to go out and grab that fruit. So thank you for my opportunity to speak on this. And I look forward to participating from the public viewpoint as far as transparency in a topic or two during this meeting.
Thanks, Kent. All right. So I believe we have some folks in the audience here who would like to speak.
Can you excuse me for a minute?
Yes.
I'd like to bring forward a point of order before we continue public comment. So in chambers, we are required to wear masks. That is part of why we're here. So if you'd please put your mask on, that would be very helpful. And if you won't, we do have other options, I suppose, but hopefully you'll take one for the team. Yeah.
I can't see them. I guess they're behind what I can't see. All right.
I think we have to hold the meeting for a minute.
Is there a minimum standard for the mask, or is it just any face covering?
We just need something that's going to cover your nose and your mouth.
So anything works? Like what I got on is good enough?
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
Can I use a polyester gaiter?
And I believe we probably have some here for folks that don't have them.
Offered it to the gentleman back there.
So I shouldn't be denied government services, city council services.
You're not. You may go and call in.
I don't have the ability to conduct this meeting.
American
I don't have
Disabilities
the
Act.
ability to conduct this meeting. Are you guys providing me a facility to do so? Are you providing me a computer to do so, or a dial-up system to do so? Are you providing me with that ability to do so? Because I was able to get here, and by denying me the ability to speak or be part of this meeting, you're denying our constitutional rights. You're denying under the federal laws of
I suggest we
Disabilities
take a
Act.
break.
Yes, ma'am. What?
Let's take a break.
Okay, we're going to take a break now. We're going to close down the meeting. All right. We are ready to reconvene the meeting. Thank you. Thank you for those of you on Zoom who have been on hold. And we really want to make sure that when people come to the meetings at City Hall that they're able to say what they need to say, but do that while following the rules of the county, the city, and the state, and keep everybody safe. So if you do not have a mask on, please put it on so that we can allow folks who are here for public comment to come up and make their public comment. Do we have anybody left? Yeah. Okay, we have, wait, I'm sorry. Captain Stevens needs to take care of it. I am really dying to hear what you have to say, though, I promise. So we are asking if you do not have a mask on, our police officers will escort you out of the. We would like to give you an opportunity to leave on your own.
We could give him a copy of the agenda so he knows how to get the Zoom link.
Okay. Are we ready yet?
He's disrupting the file.
I know. Cap. All right. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to adjourn. Okay. Oh, very good.
He could just wear a mask, though.
Yeah.
He could just put it on.
All right. Thank you. And now I would like to invite you to come up and say public comment. Yes, you come on up.
My apologies. Thank you very much for having me tonight. My name is Dr. Carl Klarner. I recently moved here to take care of my elderly mother, although my family has lived in the area since the late 1800s. I'm a former associate professor of political science, and I'm a political consultant now. Most recently, I've worked on campaigns to pass ranked choice voting in about 5 states. So I applaud the measure that you all passed on November 16th to bring about ranked choice voting in Eureka. Thank you very much. I'm really enthusiastic to live in an area where it actually has RCV, since I've been promoting it nationally. I come to you today to start a conversation about an alternate method of determining the winner under ranked choice voting. It would be very similar to the current system, the recently adopted system, but instead of dropping people, the candidate wins who wins one-on-one contest with. So whichever candidate wins one-on-one contest with all the other candidates would be declared the winner. So let me give you an example of how this might work and why it's different and why it's better. So it's a fairer system and it's a more democratic system than the elimination method that is currently used wherever IRV is, or ranked choice voting is used. Okay, so let's say there's 3 candidates, A, B, and C. Let's say that we have a polarized electorate, which is kind of not unrealistic, right? And the supporters of A don't like candidate C. The supporters of candidate C don't like candidate A. Candidate B is in the middle there, and so they don't have a lot of first choice preferences. So with the elimination method, that candidate B would be eliminated, and then the second choices of those voters would be redistributed to candidates A or C. Then you would get a fairly disliked candidate winning the election, because it's either going to be A or C, one of these people on the ends, right? But with this other alternate system. Sorry.
Oh, hold on. The light was green, Miles. When he turned it, the light turned off.
Okay.
Because I turned it on through this system. Okay, there you go. You're good to go.
Sorry.
No, you have nothing to apologize for.
Okay, so anyway, so this is the fancy word for this is Condorcet voting, but I call it round robin ranked choice voting. And so with this system, you get more widely agreed on people winning. So people that have a broader appeal to the public would be more likely to win. If there's so under the recently adopted measure, you would it's harder to explain because you eliminate the candidate that has the least number of first ranks, and then their votes are redistributed. You eliminate another one. This one's pretty easy to explain to people. It's just whichever candidate wins in one-on-one comparisons with the other candidates, they're declared the winner. Anyway, hope to talk to you about this in the future one-on-one. I believe that it's a fairer system and it's a more democratic system. And I thank you for your hard work and what might sometimes be a frustrating job also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience tonight.
Good evening. Always amazing to see how fast the mask dropped and how quickly we went from supple attempts to suppress people's constitutional rights to blatant and open violations of constitutional rights. Yeah, that's how tyranny goes. That's why we always said in Germany. Regardless of that, I wanted to tell you a little Christmas carol because it's the Christmas time, right? And that is my day today in Old Town. Actually, yeah, today only. Well, I came out into the back alley as usual, thinking what will I encounter there? And there was a young man, or it turned out to be a young man, under a blanket, huddled under. It was raining, right? And I said in my friendly, accommodating way, polite, friendly, open, caring, that I'm famous for, right? I said, "How can I help you? Is everything all right, young man? Oh, is everything all right?" That dude jumped up. He turned out to be 6'3", with a knife in his hand, and said, "I'm gonna kill you, dog." Pleasant experience, I tell you. Pleasant experience. Really nice. We had other things today. Oh yeah, I saw a fellow business owner running after a homeless woman. And I came out and said, "What happened?" And he said she came and just took random newspapers in the shop and, spread them everywhere, flying around everywhere. And she did something similar to me. A couple of weeks ago, she kicked over my sign and pulled out my flag and threw it on the ground, right? So those are the pleasantries that you have to endure with another almost $0 day sitting there, right, trying to be of service of the community, a very neat, very few people that know how to fix your handbags and shoes, right? Yeah. But regardless, that is how quality of life goes down the drain, by the way, by the great Eureka exodus going into full overdrive. That families and businesses, small businesses, handcrafters, leave. By now it feels like 50% of all businesses are boarded up, right? We always see the beautiful plywood pieces in front of the empty businesses. Great. Then the biggest nightmare that could happen to us small business owners is that you clowns up there would take over Main Street Eureka after ruining Old Town thoroughly and taking that as your biggest political achievement, right? With, for example, clearing out of Devil's Playground and the blatant support of Hatcher, right? That got you your last re-election via your voter harvesting, right? With Brandy Wilson, about which you bragged publicly on Facebook, by the way, right? Very, very funny to see how things are. The veneer is wearing thin, guys, And what you saw today was the sleeping giant, the American people flexing their muscle. People are getting really fed up on many levels because of your blatant incompetence. And you'll get the backlash. You'll see it with the crime rates. You'll see it with the plummeting sales revenues, sales taxes. You'll see it with the depleted, depressed zombie wasteland that Eureka is going into full implosion mode. And somebody will be held politically accountable and be known for that for eternity to come. Have a good day.
Hello, thank you for your time. And touch off the last speaker, a sleeping giant is waking up. And what we just witnessed you guys do, that was a bit ridiculous. That was a performance because you're all sitting right there in front of me right now, and you went 20 feet that way and had 10 police officers or so protecting you or something. You were in no danger. You just wasted the city's resources for optics, just like these masks are optics. I asked you guys during your recess, what can I wear as a face covering? And you said, just a face covering. So my shirt works, polyester works, anything works. If you were going to follow the science, you would have a minimum standard. And speaking of hypocrisy, last time I was here, I saw you dock a minute off of somebody's time for speaking. It was supposed to be 3 minutes, and you docked a minute off to bring it to 2. And you can look at the YouTube video where Susan Seaman docked a minute when she took up 30 seconds of his time in the beginning and then carried on further later, violating his rights. And what about the American Disabilities Act? If we need wheelchair ramps at marijuana grows, why can't we just say, you can just work remotely or visit remotely or something? Like, you guys don't care about people with COPD or anxiety or some other reason why they don't want to wear a mask. I've got a medical condition where I probably shouldn't wear a mask, but I'll put one on just out of respect. But some people can't. Some people won't. But the thing is when you're violating people's rights, which Susan Seaman mocked last time when she docked a minute off of his time, you're violating a lot more than just civil liberties. You're violating your oath. You're violating the people's trust. You're violating the constituents that you're supposed to represent. You want Eureka to be a good place to live so you can get your dentist back, as you spoke of last time? Then clean this shit up and treat people right. Because there's 2 types of people in this world. People that want to be left the fuck alone and people who won't leave you the fuck alone. And right now, I'm the kind of person who wants to leave people alone. And I want to see the people who won't leave people alone out of my way. All this stuff is bothering people. Man, I just had a friend get turned down for a city job because he's not vaccinated. I mean, right now, all employees should be vaccinated, but one guy showing up that's not, what's the threat? If the vaccines work, what's the threat? What's the threat? I need a vaccine so y'all feel safe? Is that it? You know what I mean? Needles are everywhere, shit's everywhere. My kid's not safe. There's nothing to do in this town. This town is a shit. You pat yourselves on the back about recognizing we don't have dentists, but you're doing nothing to make it a livable, desirable place for dentists to move to or stay in. And this is a New World Order problem. You guys are part of the Great Reset, and y'all know it. It's not a conspiracy theory, and y'all can look at me like I got two damn heads all day long, but I'm looking at y'all like you got two damn heads, and I'm only a fraction of the population that feels this way. I'm just here as a representative, a fraction.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name's Harry Wilcox. As of the 18th of next month, I have been here 15 years. And the first 10 were gorgeous. I mean, I love this place. I fell in love with it. It took my heart. I never want to go back to New York State or New York City. But in the last 5 years, I've watched this city get consumed by fear, litter, needles, drug addicts, and the homeless. And it all comes down to basically one issue: the lack of mental health services, either outreach or actual inpatient services where these people can go for help. And all that's happening is now with COVID and masking is people are becoming angrier and angrier. And that anger is misdirected towards you, towards government, instead of being directed to where it should be. And that's to get you people to put pressure on the state to help us clean up the mental health issue in this. The police can't do it. They can only try to keep it down. But most of the crime in this town is mental health related, and you got to be mentally unstable to do drugs. I know. I did them. I'm clean 15 years because I came here and got away from it. But to make my point, more money needs to be put into mental health services. That's outpatient, inpatient, outreach. You know, I agree with John and his triage center. Let's get a couple vans, go out with a police officer, social worker, pick these people up, take them to John's triage center, get them the help they need, even if they don't think they need it. That's the problem. We're coddling these people. Oh, we don't want to violate their rights. What about my rights not to walk down the street and my dog can get my nose broken, which has happened twice? How about walking down the street and not getting threatened? How about me at 68 years old standing with a police officer while he waits for backup because 4 people who are on drugs are going to attack him? And you could tell. You know, that's not my job. That's not your job. But we need better mental health services. All this COVID, you know, whatever you want to call it, distraction is taking our eye off the ball. Let's get more mental health services here, and you'll see this town clean up, I can guarantee you.
Hi, my name is Loria, and I'm sorry to pull my mask on, but I don't have a very loud voice. I have a complaint about my medical information being violated by a local businesswoman who is a real bitch. I went to go shopping in her store, and I don't have a vaccine, so I'm not allowed to shop. I told her why I can't get a vaccine. I told her it would probably kill me. Well, I'm sorry. That's the owner's, at the owner's request, that's what we're doing. It was her ruling. And I explained to them why I could not get a vaccine. Because I had a flu shot in 2005, and it did something to my kidneys. So I am not going to get a vaccine. Am I to be discriminated against and denied to go shopping and maybe eventually not be able to buy food or groceries. That is happening other places up in Canada, New Brunswick. Is it going to spread down here? Everyone loses their freedom and you're just a number. And if you don't get a vaccine, well, that's just too bad. You can go die. Is that what this is going to come to? Because I can't and I won't get a vaccine. My kidneys were damaged and my left kidney hurts me from time to time, periodically. You really think I want to go get a vaccine and maybe die? I enjoy my life. I'm 64. I'm able to go work 16 hours a day up in Alaska, out at sea. And you think I'm going to give all that up for some damn vaccine that has never been tried in long-term trials? No, I'm not doing that. But that's what people want. And I get treated rudely when I go to shop and I don't have my vaccine card. It's none of that woman's damn business. She has no right violating my private medical information. Where's my HIPAA rights? I'm going to go down there again, and if she's rude to me, I'm going to take her head off verbally. She has it coming. She's a very condescending woman. She is not a pleasant woman, but yet she treated me very rudely. And it's not right. And you know, I'll have something to say about the mask. There were studies done over in UK, and the babies whose mothers wore masks a lot, they're being born with impaired cognitive abilities. That is a permanent thing. Is that what we want for the future of our children? It needs to be thought about. You need to think carefully what you are doing. Mask mandates are not healthy, and vaccines are not. I got COVID, and it was from vaccinated people. I was not around anyone else but vaccinated people. And I had COVID and RSV at the same time. And if that woman's rude to me again, I will take her head off.
Is there a reason this isn't working? Can't hear anything back there. Good evening, Linda Lee. And I just came to serve notice of inquiries. A person to fill a term of office is not permitted to assume the duties of the office until he files a bond and oath of office, which must be done before the commencement of the term, or the office shall be deemed vacant. People versus Quimby, 1963. So I'm asking for a certified copy of a valid oath and a bond on file in a public record. And I guess I missed your salute to your four-colored commercial flag. Drawing a paycheck from the People's Public Treasury while engaged in criminal activities such as breach of trust, no. Posing as a public servant, conspiracy to commit fraud with bar members practicing a foreign jurisdiction on American soil is the very definition of enemies within, warring against the supreme law of the land. Our federal and state government is American, not British. Nowhere is it stated that any agent of government or has the power to endanger the health, safety, welfare, and rights of men and women or sons and daughters to whom government is charged to protect. As well, it has been established that judges are subject to the loss of immunities. So, too, are such loss of the corporate veil extended to all other agents of government. Attempts to convert constitutional activities into crimes are themselves criminal in nature and practice. Such attempts to convert a constitutional activity into a crime have long been established to be warring against the Constitution. Any and all attorneys who may participate in such criminal activities will be subject to investigation as co-conspirators and subject to having their homes, offices, properties raided, inspected for additional evidence of their participation in wrongdoings. Any and all grants of immunity is given to protect those who would also conspire to act in violation of law or under color of law, would and are null and void, as such activities are simply an expansion of such conspiracies and would constitute an attempt to protect additional co-conspirators. It has long been held that in matters such as these, there is no statute of limitations available to protect or defend such activities involving the abuse of authority, as such activities are null and void at their inception, even when applied under color of law, aka appearance of legitimacy of false evidence appearing real. Fear, false evidence appearing real. It's well-established law that when an agent of government acts within the lawful limitations of his office, that agent enjoys what is called limited liability. However, when such an agent acts outside those limitations, all limitations of liability vanish completely. The court made it clear that since the corporation could not practice law directly, it could not do so indirectly by hiring competent lawyers to practice for it, since that would be an invasion which the law will not tolerate. A corporation can neither practice law nor hire lawyers to enter entry on the business of practicing law for it any more than it can practice medicine or dentistry by hiring doctors or dentists to act for it. The legislature authorized the formation of corporations to carry on any lawful business and did not intend to accreditation registry, the bar cult. Thank you. Thank you. And
my name is Steve Parr. You probably remember me. I was going to appeal for a town hall meeting again, but after your contretemps at the beginning of this meeting, I can see that that's probably totally out of the question. I might remind you that your job is to represent us, not re-educate us. And perhaps you should pay more attention to listening. And going on from that, this is the first time in history where perfectly healthy people are considered to be driving an outbreak which is spreading like wildfire, even though no one is falling ill. Case counts mean nothing. A week ago Monday, I received a positive, I had a COVID test done. Wednesday morning, I received a positive result. Being the skeptical person that I am, I immediately called my doctor and was rescheduled for another test that day. Matter of fact, I was tested twice that day with 2 different types of tests, both of which came back negative. So I called the public health department to see about getting my name removed from the positive case count. Instead of agreeing to remove it in light of the 2 subsequent negative tests, I was excoriated for going out in public and putting people's lives in danger after receiving a positive test, totally disregarding the 2 subsequent negative tests. This is the madness that we are living under. Okay, if I received 50% false negatives from 2 PCR tests within 2 days, how many other people are not questioning their tests and being counted as positive cases when in reality they were not? I would think that it would be your responsibility as our representatives to look into this kind of thing instead of just totally disregarding it. It is a critical issue. All of our policy is being driven by the case counts, not by illnesses, not by death, but by case counts, which mean nothing whatsoever. It's about time y'all started representing us instead of trying to re-educate us. Thank you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor, and yes. I just want to say that I'm against the vaccines 100%. My daughter was made to take one for a job as a nurse's assistant. She took the first shot and started having female bleeding problems from it right away. She went ahead and took the second dose anyway. Now she has liver failure. The doctors say she may need a liver transplant. And I don't see why anybody, I mean, you want to take the vaccine, that's your choice, but they shouldn't be making people take it. They're making a lot of people sick. Most of the people that are in the hospital are vaccinated people. If you look at real news, you can see that anywhere. People are having myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clots, heart attacks. I had a friend that she's 75 years old. She took the vaccine and had a heart attack about 2 weeks later. And these masks are nothing but show. This is not a surgical mask. This is just a piece of paper that does nothing to protect anybody. It's a complete and utter joke. And the people, they're saying, oh, hospitals increase 38%. Yeah, that's because those are the patients that were denied services during the first part of the COVID outbreak last year. They're finally getting in to get the regular things done. They don't tell you it's not for COVID, though. And Steve was right about those tests. They're false. The man that invented it even says they're not accurate, and nobody should go by it. And that's where all these numbers are driven up. I know at least 10 people that have had COVID, it was less than a common cold for them. I mean, I had it myself like March of last year, and it was not pleasant. I had a headache, couldn't taste anything, and I was weak. I'd get out of the shower, have to go lay down, and 2 weeks that was gone. And I was around my kids the whole time. They never got sick once. But what is making kids sick is wearing a mask all day at school every day, especially when they slobber on the inside of it, and that thickens it up so they can't breathe good. Then they make them go out on the track and run. I mean, it's time to get rid of these things. These are face diapers. They belong in the trash. It's false. It ain't helping none of you. Unless I come up and sneeze in your face and I have COVID, these aren't doing nothing to protect you. So power and control, and that's it, and that's all. And I noticed when I was heading south coming into Eureka, there's a bunch more tents. As soon as you get into the city of Eureka, there's tents right there along the freeway in the medium. One tent after another. That's excellent for tourists that want to come visit Eureka for the first thing they see when they come to the town. And then they want to pop into Old Town and people crapping in alleyways and shooting up, and every abandoned storefront full of people with 5 bags of crap and talking to themselves, wiggling their head around. I mean, it's sickening. Something's got to be done about it. Somebody's got to come up with a plan to do something about it. I guess that's enough for tonight. Thanks.
We have some folks online. Okay.
We have last phone number last 4 digits 0326.
We'll get you next. I'm sorry, the number again?
0326. You're first on Zoom to speak. How about 707-726-0326?
Okay, let's get our last person here in that inside, and we'll
come on in.
This is Charles Wilson, 0326.
Okay.
So I can speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I follow this thing just like last week. I followed this thing there where the one fellow was being shut up because he didn't have his mask on. He was 20 feet from this Miss Seaman there, and I think, well, this is the way the Hitler took over. The fear. It just keeps getting more fear. Then you have the hate. My friend Fred, Fred Weiss, back in that was 70 years ago. We went to UCLA. He had the medical exam. Oh, okay. We in our short underwear and everything there, and they're taking the things, and he had Weiss means white. I thought he was strange because he didn't have a good tan or anything like that. I was used to going down to the beach and all, getting some sun on me there, and his hair was white. But he was only about I figured 2, 3, 4 years older than me, and the doctors looked at us and all that kind of stuff. And I looked at his toes, his right toe, his right 3 toes on his right foot. They're all just shrunk. They were only halfway out. And the doctor asked him, "How come you got the toes that way?" And he said, "Malnutrition." Then I started thinking, well, how come, and then I looked at his arm, and he had the tattoo, the number they put on it there. So he escaped what some people didn't escape. But the thing is, this fear is taking over the country, and the government goes along with it. Hoffman says that we need to be educated. We've had 2 years of education, and we still don't know. All I get is just like I almost got pepper sprayed asking a simple question of terminology from the Department of Health. And the thing is, I go and point it out to the Board of Supervisors, and neither Hoffman or Stevens are interested in it. Stevens says, oh, the vaccine, it's been studied for 20 years and it's not experimental. Well, I didn't ask for that. I asked the question of what the National Institutes of Health said. If a vaccine is not approved by the FDA, in those days it was not approved, it wasn't even partially approved. It's experimental. Okay, so Stephen says it's not experimental. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm Chuck's wife. Okay, we use the same phone. Can I speak too?
No, we actually.
Oh, because we only have the same phone.
Okay.
Ma'am, if
this
you
is
can
what
hold
we
on one
always do.
moment,
Okay.
we have a speaker in the chambers who is next in line, and then we can call on.
Okay, then you call on me later then, right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir.
I was just.
Hi there. My name is Pepper. I came here tonight to speak to you about this issue that other people are also concerned with. It's clear now after 2 years of this that I think we're in the depths of something that can only be described as a totalitarian coup of sorts, a medical fascist coup of global nature. We can look at the actions of the World Health Organization in the past, and we can find that it has been primarily funded by Big Pharma. Big Pharma pays for, largely, not the member states, but Big Pharma pays for and funds the World Health Organization. We're talking about massive conflicts of interest. The World Health Organization is also funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is actually the primary funder of the World Health Organization. This is as bizarre as it gets because this event was pre-planned. It's, again, we can reference Dr. David Martin's work on the nature of the patents. If you look at his lecture online called Follow the Patents, you will discover that all of this is actually merely the beginning. We're at the beginning of something that they intend to be a global transformation, which will involve what they call the fourth industrial revolution. It will involve things that are hard to imagine, but Internet of Bodies is one of the terms that is commonly bandied about now. Internet of Bodies is only possible if you inject nanoparticulates into people's bodies so that they can be tracked just like our consumer goods can be tracked. Now we can be chipped, we can be tracked by our cell phones, and we can also be injected with technologies that will make us traceable, trackable. And again, this is not unlike how livestock are treated. We can look at the history of the World Health Organization as it's become a more corrupt organization since 2009, when it tried to pass off the swine flu on us, and was discovered that after only 20 people were killed by the vaccine for the swine flu, that was stopped. This time, we now know that, and this is kind of shocking, but the Pfizer shot has expanded authorization despite its high recovery rate for COVID-19, and the fact now that Pfizer's own documents submitted to the Department of Health and Human Services show over 1,200 people died in less than the first 3 months of authorization. This is nothing short of corruption, and everyone who participates in this is in fact guilty of a crime against humanity that is unprecedented, off the charts.
Also, I'm terribly sorry, but we have far surpassed our 30 minutes for public comment. So I am going to shut the floor now, and we can reconvene. You are welcome. You're welcome to stay until after city manager's reports, if that should happen to be done before 9:30. But we've got to get on to business, so you're welcome to come back next time or to wait till the end of the meeting. But we are going to move on now to public hearings and item
Well,
E1.
maybe you shouldn't have wasted all that time with the picking the people with the map.
We
is there
have
somebody
we
online?
have another public comment period designated after we do our business, and we have several speakers. So if we allow one, we would have to do all. So we will see you. You have another period of time after we conduct our business.
You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting and come at the end. But right now, item E1, unmet transit needs. So that would be Director Lane Millar.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. The title of tonight's public hearing is Unmet Transit Needs. Each year, the Unmet Transit Needs process is carried out to identify and evaluate any potential needs that are not being met through existing public transportation services. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to accept comments and testimony regarding any unmet transit needs within the city of Eureka. The comments provided tonight by the public will be forwarded to the Humboldt County Association of Governments for inclusion in the Unmet Needs Report of findings for fiscal year 22-23. So at this point, I request for the public hearing to be open to the public.
First, do we have any questions from council on this item? Councilmember Arroyo.
I just want to clarify that this is comments are about the unmet transit needs process only, right?
I was going to say that. So if anybody has a comment specifically on unmet transit needs, you are welcome to raise your hand now. It looks like we have a couple online. Assistant City Manager Powell, could you read them off?
Caller with last number 7454. Do you have a comment regarding unmet transit needs?
Yes, I do. This is Ken Swatsky. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time down in Mexico, and there's a small little town there, relatively small, smaller than Eureka, and they have a city that's called Hermosillo, and the cities are two in between. And 24/7, they actually have bus service going through there at least every hour. That's all nights. When I'm up at 4 a.m. painting or something, I notice the bus coming by. So there's going to be people, I think, going to speak regarding possibly later, regarding the needs for transportation and things. So we don't have cars. We shouldn't have cars regarding this kind of stuff. We should be bicycling and stuff. But unless there's actually transportation of that kind of quality going amongst all the cities around here, we really don't have an option other than having cars. So I don't know how to meet that. I don't know how you can do the same as a third world country seems to do as far as having that kind of a bus service. But that is definitely an unmet need that is being met, actually down in Mexico. So I just thought I'd bring that up, for those who want to bemoan the fact that, you should not drive a car, you should ride a bicycle or walk. We're a rural area, and the service that doesn't happen here on a regular basis does happen in other parts of the world. So that is an unmet transit need. So I think I'm on point regarding that. Thank you for the opportunity to bring that forward to you at this time.
Thank you.
Caller, last digits 2122. Do you have a comment regarding unmet transit needs?
Yes, I do. This is Uri Driscoll. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, terrific. If imagine we're just talking about the city of Eureka, but it is the county seat, so that has to be considered. And the previous caller did make a good point about this is a rural community, and expecting people to bicycle everywhere isn't realistic for most of us. I used to bicycle everywhere I went when I was a young man, but that's just not realistic these days. However, what I do see as a very good possibility, while it's kind of in the works right now in Eureka, is the trolley that's running downtown. Now, it's only being run occasionally, obviously, because the nonprofit, the Timber Heritage Association, is using that. They don't have a storage place here, but I think that is something that would really fit into Old Town Eureka just wonderfully. So if you're parking somewhere maybe on the outskirts or somewhere, you don't have to move your car. You can hop on the trolley as it moves along and visit different parts of Old Town specifically, and perhaps be expanded to some other areas, Humboldt or Henderson Center, perhaps. The other one is, I don't know if you recall, but a couple of years ago, your council gave me and my wife a letter of support for operating rail bikes, which on the tracks is a fun thing. And since then, Eureka has, annexed more of the rail tracks going towards Arcata. Now, we've also been busy. We've been developing bikes that have battery-powered motors on them. So it is realistic to use these for commuting or for excursions, tourist activity between Eureka and Arcata, and perhaps beyond. So I just wanted to update you on that, and would certainly love to provide that service, and certainly encourage trolley activities wherever we can put that in, maybe up to the zoo, whatever that could be. So thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Caller named Ash, do you have a comment regarding public transit, unmet transit needs?
Yes, I do. I believe that the local public transit needs to drop all the mask mandates because they are discriminatory, and you're not allowing like a certain sect of local society to be able to participate or use the public transit. Besides being discriminatory, they are also non-effective. I mean, if you look at the size of a virus particle versus the micron size of a mask, it's like
we're talking about transit needs right now, so we got your message about.
This is the transit need.
Okay.
This is the transit need. Is it not? Do you think that disabled people who can't wear masks don't need transit?
Okay.
They do?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, what I was saying is that the masks, they're not even effective. The size of the virus, trying to block it with a mask is like trying to block like a mosquito with a chain link fence. So they don't actually do anything. And to not do anything, you're wasting all this money, and the people are spending on masks, and that you're spending on enforcing these policies to violate people's rights. But what's the point? What does it accomplish besides just hurting the people, hurting the public, hurting their ability to ride the local transit, those disabled people? And not only that, and if you look at the local and state guidelines, it says that it's not just any like physical conditions, it's also mental conditions. So like anybody who's experienced a trauma, PTSD, people have been, potentially kidnapped and masked for human trafficking, and you're making them wear masks to ride public transit. That's just horrible. And I really think you guys should grow a heart and grow a conscience about this issue, and take this under consideration, please. Thank you.
Galaxy A11, do you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having some trouble unmuting. I am a regular public transit rider. I use it to commute to work every day. And most days I unfortunately can't use it to commute home from work, just because the Eureka City Transit service hours are so short. With all the buses being back at the garage by 6 p.m., getting home from work after 5 p.m. is not always possible. So I am once again, like Bernie Sanders, asking you to restore the transit service and extend the hours, especially during events such as Arts Alive, when, so many people and so many cars head downtown. Even if it was just that one Saturday a month, having late night service on the bus would be a wonderful thing. Likewise, I mean, you guys, well, not all of you are in charge of the county bus route, but the county bus route does also need to have its service restored. And for once in my life, I actually agree with Uri Driscoll. I think it would be awesome if the Timber Heritage Association, with their cute little speeder cars and trolleys and stuff, could run some sort of little back and forth route between, you know, say maybe Target and the mall for people. But I don't know whether those vehicles would meet the federal requirements for rapid transit, you know, streetcars or light rail. I would love to see it though. But yeah, that's my comment on unmet transit needs, is please restore the service hours. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we have somebody go turn the lights on back in the hallway, please?
Our next speaker is Lizzie Ridds.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Lisi. I just had two comments as far as unmet transit. One was, I agree with the person who spoke before me, that I think that if there were later hours, especially even like on the weekends, that could be very helpful to discourage like drunk driving. There have been many times where I really wish that there was a late bus that I could take home instead of taking a cab. And then the other thing would be like cost, like for the tickets themselves. From what I've read, it seems like most of the cost of transit, like the ticket is not paying for the cost of transit. And so like, it's like 10% of the total cost or something. And so eliminating the fare could be a way to make it more affordable for low-income people having to utilize that, because it is quite expensive as like a monthly budget item for people having to use that. So that would be what I consider unmet needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That is the last one I have on here.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments on unmet transit needs? If not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council.
There's no action.
I was going to say, and then we'll just take those comments and send them off to HCOG, which is the Humboldt County Association of Governments, that are collecting those unmet transit needs. So thank you, Director Millar. Now we're going to move on to public hearing number 2, E2 State Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program Grant Application. And this is going to be Project Manager Raymond. Is she in?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. The purpose of tonight's public hearing item is to solicit public comments on the Permanent Local Housing Allocation, also known as PLHA. The city plans to apply for the 2 previous years of funding allocations of $187,000 for the 2019 funding cycle and $299,000 for the 2020 funding cycle. With that, I would like to request for the public hearing to be open for comment.
All right. Any questions before we go to public comment? Then I will open the public hearing on the PLHA grant application. Do we have any? It looks like we have a hand up.
Caller with 0326 is the last 4 digits. Do you have a comment?
I'm not. I have a difficulty with using the phone and listening, trying to get it on the internet and everything there. But anyway, I wanted to comment on the unmet transit needs, but I didn't have a chance to. I had my hand up, but I didn't get called. I've been a civil engineer for 55 years. I did the bikeway plan for the western part of the city of LA. I've supervised and designed about 20 miles of roads and stuff like that, 6 miles of state highways. And when I was down to LA in 34 years, I took my car 5 times. I was shot at twice, 3 bullets. They all missed. Saw 3 people I know got hit by cars. One died. But anyway, I wanted to say the homeless people need to have reflectors on their thing when they wander around at night so that they can be seen. The Humboldt County, and a part of it's in Eureka's in Humboldt County. It's sort of like a string of pearls. And the thing is, the only way to get between any community in Humboldt County is to go by the state highway. And the state highway likes to limit their liability by posting no pedestrians prohibited signs on all the freeways, which is illegal according to the state. They're not in complying with state law. I pointed out this. I finally got on the Mad River after 29 years. I got them to put a bridge, pedestrian crossing on there, and the other one, same way. Anyway, the other thing on the bus, the buses are awful big, and they have a lot of people. They could have smaller buses so they could get more frequent use of them. Although I don't know what the driver problem is there. But anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Do we have any comments on this item? Sorry, we didn't get you last time. For the state permanent local housing allocation program. And if not, I don't see any. I will close the public hearing.
I have one comment received, sorry.
Oh, okay.
We did receive one comment in regards to a possibility of our potential of adding a different item to our list of current activities, and that would be adding a housing trust fund. So I do have that one wrote down.
Thank you. I don't see you up on the screen. I can only hear you. So sorry if I missed you if you're trying to wave or something. I know it's K-Ray. There she is. All right. So we have that comment. I will bring it back to, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. Does anybody have any comments, or we want to authorize the city manager to administer the grant documents? Councilmember Arroyo?
I do have a question about the feasibility of the suggestion to add funds to the Housing Trust Fund. Is that something that would be feasible?
Yes, that is an allowable use of those funds.
I mean, is that something that staff feel we should consider as an alternative to what's been proposed here? I know that that would change what's before us, but.
So, to the mayor, I don't think that we'd have to change. It's just an addition. And yes, there has been requests for trust funds for housing. The county currently has one, and we've been requested by the county when we received this funding to actually put it into their trust fund. And there are definite benefits to having a housing trust fund, with, especially if we find alternative ways to fund that have a little bit more allowances. There's not as many restrictions depending on what funding you use to put into the trust fund.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit more briefly about what a housing trust fund is? Or I'm not sure whether that's to our city manager or to.
Okay, Ray, you want me to take that, or?
Okay, Ray.
I'm going to ask Lane to take it.
Oh, there's Lane.
So later on in the meeting, I have a presentation on BDU management, and I will explore this idea of having a trust fund and how that would work. And I can provide more information about trust funds during that report or right now, if that's preferred.
Do you mind if I ask Leslie her question first, and that might fit in, then we can have you explain some more. So Councilmember Castellano.
Hi, everyone. I wish I was there in person with you all, but I think actually I don't have a question, I just have some thoughts. So I would be fine with Director Millar continuing. Thank you.
So why don't you give us a little bit of information, Director Millar, and then we'll have Councilmember Castellano follow you.
So with the PLHA, that funding can actually be used to add to the trust fund. The other requirement for a trust fund is that it has a reoccurring or ongoing source of revenue. And that will be a part or a portion of my presentation. So we do have the option of, not going with a trust fund if, this is just adding to the list of possibilities. One of the items is in an ADU financing program, and I believe that could also be part of the trust fund programs. So I think, I do think we should at least add it to the application so that if we need a little bit more flexibility in the future, that can be an option. We don't have to make the decision tonight, and I think after my presentation, we might be open to the idea.
Leslie, hold on just a sec. Councilmember Arroyo.
Oh, just I like the idea of adding it so that we do have that possibility. And I like the fact that a housing trust fund would allow us to have some, just some funding that could be used for housing, but perhaps not so restrictive and tightly locked down as a lot of the funding sources that we may have. I'd like to voice support for that, but interested to hear what Councilmember Castellano has to say.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to unmute. I also support a housing trust fund from my research related to housing. It could potentially also give us some leveraging for other grants and funding. So I think I thank you so much to staff for bringing this forward. I'm excited about it. And generally excited about this program. I think for one of my kind of thoughts, again, and this would be for sort of like the next round, but I thought since it was on the agenda, I'd go ahead and bring it up, is just to consider, like whether a home repair program could also be a way of helping reduce homelessness and helping, I definitely noticed that, sometimes it's hard to get a lot of housing out of this funding, just because it's because of how it has to be implemented. So, I'm just kind of curious for analysis for the future if some sort of like home repair program could support that, and then, I'm just excited about the ideas for housing trust funds and potentially allowing for different kinds of home ownership opportunities as well related to that. So thank you.
All right. City Manager Slattery, do you want to say anything about the home repair, just since I just asked you about it today too?
So yeah, I think housing coordinator Raymond would need to respond on whether PLHA funds could be used for this, but I do know that we applied for CDBG funding for owner-occupied repairs to their houses, which goes along the lines of what Councilmember Castellano's intent was. We're going to have a back and forth with the state about that application and hopefully be able to get it processed, but if we're not successful this year, I'm sure we could try again next. But I think housing coordinator Raymond could discuss whether or not the PLHA funding, I know we talked about condoizing and it is available for that, but I'm not sure if it's available for owner-occupied repairs.
So owner-occupied repairs is an available usage of this funding. So that is an opportunity we could also add to our application if that's something that you feel is feasible for us and our community. But as City Manager Slattery had stated, there's always funding opportunities that the city can go after if we're looking at just applying for funds separately for that type of program. And we do currently have a program that already has the outline of it. We actually offer it under CDBG, depending on if we have funds in the year that they're applying for. And so anybody can actually apply for an owner-occupied rehabilitation loan currently under the city. It is solely dependent on if we have funding to provide that.
All right. Do we have any other comments, or does anybody want to authorize the city manager make a motion to do that? Councilmember Arroyo?
Just a moment. I need to get to my motion here. So I move that we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eureka approving an application funding for the state permanent local housing allocation program for Development Department funding amount for 2019, $187,522, and funding amount of 2020, $299,270. Combined total of $486,792. And authorize the city manager to administer grant documents, including the execution of a standard agreement and any requirements, amendments, or related documents necessary to participate in the program, and include a home repair program and a housing trust fund as possible uses for that funding.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Member Moulton. Any other discussion on this item? All right, then let's vote.
Councilmember Castellano
Aye.
and Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
And you guys, if you want to vote.
And did you guys all vote on your? All right. There
we go. Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
All right, we will move on to the consent calendar. I didn't hear about anything being pulled, but does anybody have anything that they needed me to pull tonight? All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
All righty. Could everybody please vote?
Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
All right. So now we are on G, legislative action correspondence. Was there any emergency legislative action correspondence we needed to address this time? Okay. Then we will move on to our ordinances and resolutions, and number H1 is a property transfer, and that will be for City Manager Slattery.
My apologies, I'll start it over again. This item is related to a property transfer, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is recommending that the Council adopt a resolution finding that properties owned by the cities, 3 of them, are exempt surplus lands under Government Code Section 54221, and also approve a memorandum of agreement between Pearson's Properties and Development and the City of Eureka for the exchange of properties. So, hold on one second. It should be on the desktop. Hold on. Assistant City Manager Powell. My apologies. If you could click through 2 screens, please. So just as a background to how we got here today, you can go to the next slide. Back in May of this year, there were 3 public meetings held to discuss affordable housing developments on city-owned properties. At those meetings, there was approximately 70 community members in attendance at each one of those meetings. There was an overwhelming concern of the loss of parking lots and how it would have an effect on businesses. So based on those concerns during those meetings, staff announced at each of the meetings that We look at alternatives to the parking lot developments, which included the trading of properties, as long as an equivalent number of units could be achieved through the development of those transferred properties, and as long as we had approval from the State Housing and Community Development. So at that time, we explained those things, and as far as the process that would be involved, is property owner would have to contact the city. We would look at the properties that they're offering up for transfer, verify that the zoning is appropriate, verify that the allowable units on the properties that to be transferred are going to meet the same number of units, and in order to do that, we use the same criteria that we use in the in the housing element, and then go through HCD approval once we made those determinations. So as far as the property transfer, you click 2, please. Property transfer itself. The city-owned properties that are being transferred, if pending council's approval, that would be transferred, are the parking lots at 4th and G Street, 5th and H Street, and 5th and K Streets. And the property that the city would gain ownership of would be 4 parcels that are owned by Pearson Property and Development, LLC. One's at 1200 West Harris Street, which is just above Broadway on Harris Street. And then the 3 parcels that are adjacent to it along the cliffs. We'll show some location footage aerials of those properties. Next slide, please. These are the city-owned parking lots that would be up for transfer. On the far left is the 4th and G parking lot. In the middle is the 5th and H parking lot. And on the right is the 5th and K parking lot, which is just adjacent to City Hall. These are the properties that the city would receive. That include the red outline of the parcels there. It's basically the 4 parcels that are between Harris and Henderson, just offset from Fairfield Street. Next slide, please. As far as the housing units involved in this, in the housing element that we currently have right now, for the 3 properties that are up for being transferred, the total amount of units that would come from those based on the housing element was 45 very low income units and 20 low income units. Based on the properties that we were to receive from Pearson Property Development, we would actually increase the amount of allowable units, and we would be able to create 59 very low income units and 45 low income units. These numbers are derived using the same method of calculating as staff did for the housing element and determining how many units we could develop per acreage and the zoning area. Just like Link, the developers that were awarded the first 3 properties, a developer could develop more on both the city-owned lots and the PPD properties. For the city-owned lots, a developer could use a higher floor area ratio and achieve more units. And for the PPD properties, a developer could use infill incentives and achieve more units. Either way you look at potential units, the PPD property allow for more affordable units, especially when you factor in the constraints on some of the city-owned lots, on all of the city-owned lots. This transfer will definitely increase the number of units as proposed in the 2019-2020 housing element and assure no net loss. Skip 2, please. I wanted to give a brief kind of background on the housing element and where, similar to how we got here, and the reason why we're going to need to go back to adopt our housing element again. When we first started off with the housing element, we listed 12 properties. They're up on the screen right now. The first 3 of those properties went out to RFP. Link was awarded that, and they're in the process of securing funding so that they can develop the properties. And then during that time, after we received approval for the housing element, staff determined that 2 of the properties, Cooper Gulch, as well as the Sheriff's Woodlot, were not eligible for housing because of a deed restriction that we had on the lot. So next slide. So right now those had to be removed from the property list, and right now this is a list of properties that we currently have on the inventory. Also, after we did the link process, we did replace the 3rd and E Street parking lots with 2nd and L Streets. Other than that, so we're down now to 10 properties as opposed to the 12. Next slide, please. Because of the loss of the Cooper Gulch and Sheriff's Woodlot properties, we lost a total of 60 units when we lost those properties. Thankfully, with the Link property, because of their increased density compared to what we had calculated on the housing element, we gained 44 units. So currently we have a deficit of 16 units. This property transfer would allow for 39 units to be gained, and we would be able to meet, once updating our housing element, be able to meet the guidelines and actually exceed the amount of regional housing needs assessment numbers that we need to meet. So next slide, please. 2 of them. So once this has been developed, there's been a lot of community concerns that have been brought to staff's attention. Some of the concerns include developable area on the PPD properties. There's concern about the slope there and how much of the area is actually developable. There was also some concerns about the property values and an inequity in property values that the city was losing. There was also a concern about the no cost for the new utility services that are in the agreement, and I'll explain that more. And then also some concerns about the indemnity language on the agreement. Next slide. As far as the developable area, so these are the parcels that the PPD owns that would be coming into the city's ownership if approved by council. The red areas there are areas indicative of a slope that's greater than 27.92 degrees. So those sloped areas there are deemed to be not developable. So this was done on our GIS data. We took this out with our previous building official to go on site to look at this property. We verified that those areas within the green area are areas that are available for developing. So those could be used, and that's how we derived the numbers. Not only was it verified through the GIS, but also through a field visit with our building official. Those areas in red that are in the middle of that green area are areas that could be cut and filled and develop the slopes necessary for development. Next slide, please. As far as the appraisals of the properties, there was some community concern that the city's values of the properties were far greater than what the properties were going to receive. The city did do an appraisal for the 5th and K property in June of 2021. The 5th and K property appraised at $216,000. We have not received an appraisal for 5th and H or 4th and G Street. However, both of those properties are in a similar state to 5th and K and also are zoned the same as 5th and K. So using the price per acre for 5th and K Street, the property values of 5th and H would be $208,000 and 4th and G would be $294,000. Pearson Property and Development had appraisals for the 3 vacant parcels in June of 2021. Parcel 1 appraised at $880,000, parcel 2 $640,000, and parcel 3 $1,070,000. And the most recent appraisal of the property that has the building on it currently was $375,000 in 2018. Obviously, that value is probably higher now due to the increase in property values. But based on those, the total values of the properties the city receiving is approximately $2.9 million. The city-owned properties is $718,000. Next slide, please. So for the utility services, as a part of this agreement, there was an agreement for two water and 2 sewer hookups to the property. So right now on the 1200 West Harris property, there is a building currently there. The property owner wants to maintain that building and relocate it to a parcel across the alley. And so as a part of that, they requested that they don't have to pay impact fees. And so while there's no impact fees, what we're basically doing is there's an existing water and sewer hookup at that location. We're basically transferring that water and sewer hookup to the new parcel where the building is going to go. The other service would be used for a proposed ADU, And for ADUs, accessory dwelling units, we don't charge impact fees for that. And so while they're free for services, one is an exchange and the other one is something we typically don't charge for an accessory dwelling unit. And the next slide. There's also concerns about indemnity. City Attorney Black has reviewed the indemnity clauses within the agreement. He's comfortable with the indemnities given to the city, mainly because they rely on environmental issues with the property. And as a part of the agreement, there's a 60-day inspection period. And during that 60-day inspection period, staff would be getting a phase 1 on the property, as well as the PPD would get a phase 1 on the city-owned properties. And if there's any sort of issues at that point, then there's enough exit clauses for us to get out of it if need be, if there's any sort of issues with the property. So the city attorney is okay with the language that's in there. There's one area that I didn't cover, and that was about the public process involved in this. As I stated, there was a lot of community concern when we had those meetings. That's when we discussed this, and that's when this was first brought to the attention of the public. There was a process that needed to be followed before we could get to this point in time where we're ready to make a decision. We worked with at least 3 different property owners, looking at probably about at least 8 or 9 different properties throughout the city. These are the only ones that really fit the requirements that we needed, as far as the same number of units, as well as the appropriate zoning and getting approval for HCD. So once all of those processes were taken care of, we had to work out the agreement. The agreement was actually finalized. As far as public processes also related to the PPD properties, this was very similar to our housing element. All of these properties were reviewed and looked at and zoned as residential, and that was a part of the housing element property process, just like it was for the city-owned properties. On top of that, in order to get this property into the state that it is now, the current property owner had to do a lot line adjustment that went through a public process in order for their development that they were proposing previously. And then they also, we abandoned an easement for them for stormwater treatment. That went through a public process. And then we also, he had a plan that was brought in front of the design review, and that went through a public process as well. So this property here has been slated for residential development for a long period of time, and it's actually been through a public process related to a different project. What staff sees as a benefit for this is the city can control how that gets developed, and also have public meetings, discuss concerns, and mitigate some of those concerns that potentially a private property owner wouldn't need to, but that we could address. And so with that, that's all I have. And if there's any questions from council, I'm available.
All right. And I was going to say, can you turn it off so we could see Councilmember Castellano and Bauer if they have any questions? Does anybody here at the dais have any questions? Councilmember Arroyo and then Burgell.
Well, I see that the current property owner is here, and I don't know if they would like to speak to this or if staff would like to, but do we know about why the proposed development that went before design review in June of last year did not proceed? Any thoughts on that?
I don't want to put words in the developer's mouth, but I believe it was because of some of the development fees. And if I'm wrong on that.
Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Pearson?
You don't
have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, it didn't go forward. But there wasn't a barrier. I guess what I'm getting at is, was there a barrier that we are not talking about here that, that resulted in those not going forward?
No, not something that the staff is concerned with in the visiting with the chief building official. Obviously, those contingencies related to the 60-day inspection period, we'll need to do our due diligence related to that.
Of course.
But other than that, no.
But okay. So there's nothing that would prevent us from moving forward with housing development on that property should we make this decision?
No, pending the inspection, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Burgell.
So I actually have a few questions. So I've talked to a few people in the community. Some of the concerns that weren't addressed in what you were speaking to were, this is Christmas time, small meeting. What is the importance of having this meeting now as opposed to putting it forward to January, where potentially more people could be here?
So this has been a very long process. Like I said, it's starting back in May. During that time frame, we had intended on putting out an RFP for some of the parking lots that we had that were outside of this property transfer. When we went forward to do that, we had a meeting with HCD, and HCD notified us that laws have changed around the surplus land, and whether or not before we were under the understanding that we're a charter city, we have our own surplus land ordinance, and our housing element was approved to proceed in a certain way, which basically was, these are the list of properties, we're going to put them out to RFP, we're good to go. When we had the meeting, I believe it was in August, with HCT to discuss this property transfer as well as other things, they notified us that what we did with Link actually was in violation of the surplus land regulations, and that if we wanted to go forward with this, that we would have to go through the process of surplusing the properties and those type of things. This delayed it significantly because then we had to get retain counsel to look into surplus lands and see what we can and can't do. It delayed the process not only because of that, but also because of looking at this property transfer. We received a letter, I believe, 3 weeks ago from HCD saying that we needed to move forward with this as soon as possible, either with an RFP or with a sole source if we can exempt the property to develop this some of these properties that we have listed in our housing element. Then on top of that, because of the issues with the Sheriff's Woodlot and those type of things, we need to also update our housing element. We need to redo the inventory, demonstrate that there's no net loss, and bring that back and have our housing element. That needs to be done by by first quarter of 2022. And I believe council was all included on the email when I responded to that letter. So it's very important that we get this list done. So whether council approves this or not, that list needs to be established. We need to determine that whether those are exempt or not exempt. And then we need to start going through the process of updating our housing element. I think 3 months already is an extremely tight time frame in order to do that. And so this is the reason why we had to bring it forward. We couldn't have brought it forward before this time because of the negotiations and getting the agreement set. It was just finalized literally a week and a half ago. And so that was as soon as we could get it onto the agenda, we got it onto the agenda. While we were working on this agreement was when we received that letter from HCD.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm also, a question that I got was, would there be an opportunity for us to include better bike and ped facilities in that area?
So that's what I was referencing as it relates to if a private property, PIRs or public improvements in the right of way that we can hold them accountable for. But with the city having ownership of this, whether we own it or a private property, it's going to be housing. The city would have more control as to what we could look for in a developer, whether it's through an RFP or through sole sourcing it with a developer to get those improvements either for access to, the nearby parks or access to public transit or, sidewalks, those type of things. I mean, similar to what we did with Link, Link is making a lot of improvements to non-motorized transportation as a part of their developments. That's something that we could definitely do for this property as well.
Great. And last one for now is there were concerns brought forward to me that we are somehow putting parking lots above people. And so I'm curious if you could just respond to that.
Well, I don't know how to respond to that, but I can tell you that, there's still parking lots on the list. Those lists that I showed up in the slides there, 5th and D is still on the list. That will be developed. 6th and L, which is adjacent to us here, will be developed. We're also brought to council a memorandum of understanding for an intermodal transit center with the potential for housing. That will also be coming to council too within the next couple of council meetings, because we believe we've found a path in order to include that and make that a multi-use development and have the intermodal transit center along with housing, both either student market rate but also affordable housing as a part of that development. And so those are the parking lots that are behind the Lost Coast Brewery, and those are the ones that we have for the intermodal transit center, but we're thinking we can also turn that into housing as well. So yes, we plan on continuing to develop the parking lots in a reasonable way. You know, my viewpoint on this is that the end goal of the housing element in Arena is to develop more units. This allows for us to develop more units. And, you know, I think that with this being done, we would be able to make up for those losses of the sheriff's properties that had to be removed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I would like to ask if Councilmember Castellano or Bauer have anything. Okay, I don't have enough room on my screen. Councilmember Castellano, thank you.
No problem. Let's see. And thank you. I do appreciate all of the time that staff has spent on this. I know it's been a big task. So just a couple of questions. Will the transit, this is maybe like a multi-part question, but will the transit hub be included in the new updating of the housing element?
Yes, that is the intent. Once we put the inventory, it's hard to put a number to that. We'll probably we'll use the same calculation means to get to how many units we can get there. But I think because it's going to be a multi-use development, we may need to take it back a little bit, because when we start putting in other types of housing there, the funding may not be available to get as many affordable units. But there'll definitely be a minimum of 40% of the units that are in that housing development that will be low income and very low income.
And will that put us kind of over our arena numbers?
Yes.
Over like
yeah,
okay.
Based on units for sure. I think that we need to be strategic when we redo the housing element. And very low income, but there's definitely a surplus. When we had the Sheriff's Woodlot, it was surprising to me to find out that we had 40 very low income listed in there and no low income. And so we just need to make sure that when we slice up the pie that we're addressing those two categories.
Thank you. And then this is the question I'm most excited about. It may be a speculative question, but would it be possible to keep any of the lots proposed in the trade or in the exchange?
I don't understand. You mean like say?
Well, right now we're proposing to exchange 3 lots. So instead of that, to exchange 1 lot with money.
So meaning rather than trade the lot, give person property money? I'm still not understanding.
Yeah. It's just that if that's an option.
Yeah, I would have to say no. I think that this has been a very long back and forth, and there's another, and I don't think that would be something that they would be interested in, but we could always ask.
And sorry, I have just a couple more questions. Could you speak to the likelihood that, so let's, if we move forward with staff recommendation, the likelihood that the parking will be privatized? I know it's somewhat a speculative task.
So I can't say what they will or what they won't do with the properties. I do know that the other entity invested. What they'll do with that, whether it'll be private, whether it'll be public, will be up to them. It also still allows for them to the property as well.
My final question for now, sorry, thank you everyone, is like, would it be possible to, go ahead and release some of the other sites, such as site number 10, which is 6NL, out for RFP, and through then updating our housing element and including the transit hub, have more time to think about the consequences of planning and long-term planning, including the parking study around this issue?
So when we spoke with HCD, when we develop the properties is up to us, but we run the risk of doing that and then not having the housing element be approved. I think the first step in the process is to get all of the properties that are going to be included in this and have that inventory. And then once we have that inventory, even prior to updating the housing element, is to make sure that we can exempt them or at least go through the surplus land legislation so that we can free those properties up, whether it's for an RFP or a sole source with a developer. But we need to do that first, and I think that we need to establish that list of properties so that we're not going back and forth and having delays with approvals and not approvals. We have worked with legal counsel, and we think that once we establish this list, that we have Government Code Section 37364, I believe it is, that would allow us to exempt these properties, the surplus land legislation, which would open up a lot of freedoms with the city and Eureka City Council as to whether we go out to an RFP or we sole source it directly with a developer.
Thanks. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councilmember Bauer first because he was wanting to, and then I'll come back to you guys. Councilmember Bauer?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Too.
All right. My Wi-Fi is precarious, so I'll give it a try. There's been a lot of good questions asked. One of them that I had, and I don't have any idea, but I think it's intriguing. Are there any city lots there that generate revenue? Like, is this something that, not that our parking is that expensive, but just knowing that we're good right now, but in the future, is this something that losing that revenue would affect us? And yeah, I'll start with that. Okay. I'll let somebody else talk. Thanks.
Out of the 3 lots, there's only one that's metered, and that's the 5th and H parking lot. Staff looked at the revenue. We don't keep precise numbers between lots as to what each one gets. We have an overall number for the lots. I believe fiscal year, you average about $50,000 from all of our lots for the revenue from those things, and based on parking studies and stuff done in the past, staff estimates that the 5th and H parking lot generates about $8,000 a year in revenue, approximately. It's not exact, though. It's just based on parking lot studies and the overall revenue we get from all of the parking lots.
All right. Do you have another question, Councilmember Bauer? Scott?
No, I'll let somebody else go. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Burgell.
So I am curious, this is kind of a sidebar, but about the monument. So I realize that the monument will be there. It's there now. But I'm curious, I have concerns about that going digital at some point. Is there a way to prevent that from going digital in this agreement?
No, what we did with the monument sign is the zoning right now allows for that use there. So whether we go with this deal, if council approves this or not approves it, the same thing exists for parcel that will go back to PPD, allow them to own that parcel. It'll be under the same zoning. Our current inland zoning code does not allow for digital,
Great.
and so no, that could not happen.
Great. Thank you. All right, Councilmember Moulton.
I just want to understand or clarify that I'm reading this correctly. There's nothing, because you talk about maintaining parking, but there's nothing in this agreement that would require that any of this be maintained as parking. Is that correct?
No, there is not currently.
Okay. And then we had, just trying to get a clear picture in my head of how many lots in Old Town this leaves the city to put forward for development. I mentioned 5th and D, 6th and L, 3rd and G, C to F, or something like that. How many lots are left in Old Town and downtown that will ultimately become housing in the plan as it stands?
So you had the list right, 5th and D, 6th and L here. There's one at 3rd and G and also one at 3rd and H. They're right next to each other, behind the Lost Coast Brewery. It's not a parking lot now, but the other one is Broadway and McCullens, which is a Caltrans owned property that's going to be used for affordable housing. And then furthermore, this may go into the housing element as well. The 7th and Myrtle project with Danco, the original plan was to use the redevelopment property that's across Myrtle at 6th Street. That is right next to the Humboldt County Office of Education admin building. It's a vacant lot. That property is no longer needed by them for that development, and so that also could potentially go into the inventory for the housing element.
Sorry, could you just repeat that last part again?
That could go into the inventory for the housing element.
Where was that property?
Oh,
sorry.
so 7th and Myrtle is where Danco's doing the veterans something. They just received. Directly across the street, there's the not brand new, but relatively new development for H. West of that property, it's the vacant parcel next to it. The city owns that.
Huh. Do you mean Danco's going to do veterans or senior?
Senior, excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry, I get
Thought
them
the
confused.
whole plan changed. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're still looking at developing more housing in Old Town to increase our walkability as a city and put more affordable housing in that district.
And that's why I think that, this transfer really helps with still maintaining some of the parking, but bringing some housing into that intermodal transit center there and adding more units there. It's hard for me to talk about it completely. I can assure you that, like I said, 40% of the units that are developed, what that means is dependent upon the financing that's needed in order to get, whether it's workforce housing. But there's definitely going to be a combination of at least student and affordable housing, or workforce and affordable housing, or a combination of three: workforce, affordable, as well as student.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions from council? So what I'm going to ask council is to hear public comments, because we have a lot of those. And then before we have discussions and make a motion, we'll take a break, because I know we're late for a break. It's been a weird meeting, so in terms of timing. So thank you for being patient for your break. And we will start with public comment. Do we have any public comment in the building about this item? Just listening? Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to Zoom.
The first hand up is last digit 7454. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Kent Sawatsky.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this topic. I have a lot of faith in your city manager, Miles Slattery. I always have, but I'm not going to cheerlead any more than that. Basically, I spend a lot of time at the courthouse, as some of you are aware, in the supervisor's chambers. And frequently, pre-COVID, it was getting to be where I would have to park 3 blocks away from the courthouse to get parking. And a lot of that was dependent upon how many trials they had, how many people were in there for juries. You have all the employees, of course, working for the county, and a lot of those will be coming back, I believe. And so parking in this particular area is pushed out frequently 4 or 5 blocks already with the parking lot you have. I would really emphasize the need for parking there. I know some people think that we're not a rural community, that we can all bike or walk or take public transit. As I mentioned before, it's near non-existent for most of us. And we need the opportunity to get downtown and have a place where we can park. My knees aren't good, and I hate to be walking 7 or 8 blocks to get to a meeting, if that's what it takes. Any of these projects where you have housing, of course, for people, and I strongly support that. I had an affordable housing project down in the gazebo known as the Brothers Building, 8 units there in commercial downstairs. Had to do in lieu parking funds. Back then it was like $7,500 per space. But my tenants had nowhere to park no matter what because the parking was not put in. So you're already in a very highly stressed area. If you're going to convert these to residential, I highly recommend that you require a parking garage on the first floor. You're going to have more people there living in the units. And you have some commenters on here, and I think it was there was a Mr. Fisk and Tom Wheeler, and I think they all hope that we're all going to ride bikes and walk, but we can't do that. We're not downtown LA. We're not a big city. People need to come to town to shop, and it was mentioned there as part of the quote in this Lost Coast article. It's using public funds to maintain extensive parking spaces downtown as an economic loser for the city, while housing people is. And anyway, I would have to 100% disagree with that. If we don't have parking down there, we can't come shop. We can't do business with the county, and so the parking is a necessary thing. Maybe in the future it won't be, but for now it is. And again, Tom Wheeler was speaking against this particular project along with Colin Fisk. And, if those two people are able to not have cars and strictly use public transportation, bike or walk, then congratulations to them. But I'm just guessing their households do own a vehicle and would need places to park. I know Epic has basically enabled, in my opinion, all the pot grows to continue up in the hill, or the cannabis grows in the hills. And so it's not carbon neutral when you have people. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and I strongly support your staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Alrighty, our next speaker is Lulu Mickelson.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Lulu Michelson, and I was able to move to the area permanently about a year ago to be closer to family, which has been a real treat. And in that process, I've gotten to know a lot of you as I try and figure out how to parlay my professional experience in housing and government to sort of figure out how to add value locally. So I just want to thank many of you for taking the time to get to know me and figuring out how to help. And I also have firsthand experience with the housing element and in local government. So I have a lot of empathy for what staff have been going through to try and puzzle this out and make it work. So I just wanted to lead with that and honor how much energy it takes to figure these things out. I wanted to bring up a point that to me and in the work that I've done and thinking about housing justice and, trying to figure out how to untangle our housing crisis, not all units are created equal. And I would say that units that are in walkable areas with lots of businesses and access to transit and healthcare should be seen as like the gold standard for what we think about with affordable housing. And I have real concerns about the proposed property and that it starts to sort of isolate our low income neighbors in areas that are not as walkable, that are farther away from amenities and resources. And I think again and again, public policy research shows us that citing affordable housing in our kind of downtown transit rich areas is really the way to start to build towards housing justice. And so I think, these properties are such amazing assets to have in your downtown and to, hand them off to a private developer without the requirement for parking, which seems to be really the biggest public, the barrier that you faced in terms of originally using these sites for housing seems like we're not really getting closer to any of our goals. And so I guess I just wanted to make sure that we're not just looking at unit counts, but also the quality of life for the folks who are going to be living in these units. And so I just think there's a missed opportunity here. And these sites are such amazing public assets. I would hate to see them sort of lost. But I also know you're in a complicated puzzle. So I just wanted to honor that. But I guess sometimes just looking at unit count can, we forget the lives that people live and how we want to create, what communities you want to create for these neighbors and our affordable housing. So I just wanted to put that into the mix.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Smith.
Hi, thank you. My name is Rebecca Smith. I'm an attorney with Legal Services of Northern California. My office, in collaboration with attorneys at the Public Interest Law Project, which is a statewide organization specializing in protecting affordable housing, together we submitted a written comment which goes into more detail about our concerns, but I'd like to draw the council's attention to a few specific points. First, the city has not followed the required process to make a substantive change to its housing element because it's not amended or obtained proper community input. Without amending the housing element and admitting that the change it has been driven by outcry from the business community, this proposal is improper and inconsistent with its housing element and with other applicable law. Action like this that's inconsistent with the city's general plan and elements are legally void, and any interested party can challenge such an action in court. City Manager Slattery tonight mentioned updating the housing element, which I'm glad to hear because it's so clearly legally required, but procedurally it has to happen prior to this action taking place. Second, this action conflicts with the no net loss law, which provides that the reduction of density of any site for affordable housing is not permissible unless the jurisdiction identifies suitable, adequate, and available sites with equal or greater density. So approving a plan to dispose of sites identified in the city's inventory to provide needed parking for local businesses violates that law. The proposal is also misleading by comparing the minimum number from the existing sites with speculative potential numbers at the new sites. The city's numbers are also inflated by one of the sites, which lacks any density restriction, permitting the city to claim a far greater capacity than is realistic, especially when you consider the neighborhood characteristics. Ultimately, replacement of existing parcels with the space and zoning to permit affordable housing development with new ones with less dense zoning represents a net loss in the city's affordable housing, especially with regard to concerns brought forth by HCD regarding the viability of developing some of the other parcels that are in the housing element. Finally, the Surplus Land Act promotes affordable housing development on unused or underused public lands and requires that a city first offer land it seeks to sell or rent for the development of affordable housing. The city's proposed resolution improperly attempts to qualify the parking lot site as exempt from that act by finding them necessary for agency use. Redesigning housing element affordable housing sites for parking rather than housing does not render parking lots necessary for agency use because the affordable housing will not be used by the agency and the parking lots will be used by local businesses. The proposed action clearly violates the Surplus Lands Act, and we believe a court would agree. Despite what appears to have been a premature approval from HCD without all of the facts before it. Thank you very much. We urge the city not to move forward with this action.
All righty.
Our next speaker is Lizzie Ritz.
Hi there. Just making sure you can hear me.
We can.
I'm Lucy. I've been here for half my life now, like 15, 20 years. And I just, when I heard about this happening, this proposed swap, it really concerns me. And so I'd just like to publicly express my disapproval for this land swap. I believe that those lots, there are public property, like they are ours. They're located in extremely desirable parts of town that would make fantastic places to live. They're located near jobs, local businesses, the highway, public transit, the bay, etc. And right now, Humboldt is one of the hottest markets in the US for real estate. So giving up such valuable downtown mixed use space feels really short-sighted given the projected value of that space. And downtown is the best place to increase density. And as cities and towns around the world show, it's also some of the most valuable land historically. And I personally know a number of working people who cannot afford a vehicle, don't currently have a vehicle, and would love to live downtown close to potential work and shopping. The co-op's close to there, you know, that there's like tons of opportunities to access public transit and get around without a car. Additionally, from what I've read, there were already plans in progress for Pearson lots to be developed into housing units. So it seems like this choice would ultimately result in a loss of total units if the parking lot spaces are not also developed into housing as well. There are also no promises made for Pearson to maintain parking on those lots. So I would personally suggest that more opportunity for public engagement on this decision is possible, because I know a ton of people that don't get to come to these meetings because they work or because they don't know they exist. And so I don't necessarily believe that there's as much support for giving up these lots as a few people that are business interests joining a public meeting a few months ago would show. So I would strongly hope that people think more about this decision before just moving forward with it right before Christmas. And thank you.
Our next speaker is A. Christensen.
Hello. So I share Councilmember Castellano's concern with the, hi, my dog is going to join us, with the potential of basically privatizing the parking lot at City Hall. Oh. Sorry, could you guys hear that, or was I still muted?
No, you're good. We can
Okay.
hear you.
I lived for a long time in a city that privatized its public parking to a private company. It was an absolute disaster for everyone in the city, from the residents to the city itself as far as revenue. So I, like I said, I'm pretty concerned about the potential for Pearson's or another property owner to purchase that 5th and K lot at City Hall and then privatize it. That doesn't sit well with me. I've had bad experiences with it. If Rob Arkley were to buy the 4th and G lot across from the Performing Arts Center and build a multi-level parking garage there, not really a big deal to me. I mean, I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't hate it. But for someone to potentially, privatize and build a secure, parking garage or metered lot at City Hall, seems undemocratic to me. So that said, let's see here. As far as the Pearson parcels on Fairfield between Harris and Henderson, currently, I don't know how familiar you guys are with that area. There are not complete sidewalks on that side of Harris. Henderson also, does not have complete pedestrian infrastructure, and Broadway below them does not have sidewalks on that side. So that's really, not what I would consider as a transit user, a pedestrian and transit friendly area. There's not a bus stop at Henderson and Broadway. The closest bus stop would be at the Bayshore Mall, at least for the county bus. My other concern with those parcels is that the property owners who have homes on Fairfield right now, might decide that they don't want that housing there, that it's going to ruin their views, it's going to ruin their property values. They're going to fight it and, kick the can down the road, just like some of the business owners in Old Town are doing right now with these properties.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid your time's up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Neil Latt.
Thank you, Neil Latt. I'm a resident of the city and I practice law as an attorney in the city of Eureka as well. I support this land exchange in general because it enables affordable housing. My concerns here are with the the MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement as written, and particularly the indemnity provisions, which are not reciprocal and parallel for the parties. Specifically, Section 6 would require the city to indemnify Pearson Properties and Development for alleged environmental violations, regardless of when such alleged violations occurred. But as for Pearson Property and Development, it would only require that entity to indemnify the city against alleged violations of environmental regulations to the extent that such alleged violations exist at the time of closing. And if the council were to accept the MOA as written, it would have significant implications for the city as for potential contamination on the parking lots it would be trading, which could not be found in a simple phase 1 environmental scoping. This could be a deal that came back to haunt the city. A concern I also have is for the catch-all indemnity provision that would benefit Pearson in the section H of the proposed MOA, that also would require the city to be on the hook for Pearson Property and Development's defense in the event that litigation were brought and pay his legal fees. And from the comments from Ms. Smith representing Public Interest Law Group, that seems, in my opinion, likely that there will be litigation around this proposed MOA if approved. And finally, I have a concern about the giveaway of the sewer as proposed in the MOA, the sewer infrastructure to Pearson Property and Development. Has the council considered and discussed the potential impact for the limitation on the development if this land trade goes through for the retention of that sewer infrastructure by that entity? How Pearson would maintain, replace, and repair that sewer line. It's not clear from the MOA itself. And I would ask the city council to delay ratification of this MOA and send it back for these issues to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latt.
Our next speaker is William Needham.
Thank you. I'm a director of Redwood Capital Bank, which adjoins one of the parking lots in issue. First off, I want to thank you very much for your time. And I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but as you know, there was a bit of an upset there this evening, and I decided to bail out and appear by Zoom. A couple of things. First, they seem to talk here as if that somehow that the business owners of downtown and Old Town aren't also members of the city of Eureka, and that we can just do away with their parking and that doesn't affect real lives. Respectfully, it does. These people have already taken a horrible hit from COVID, and to eliminate the parking for their customers is just another hit. And further, there's been arguments or at least a couple of indications that, gee, the parking lots here are a better site than the proposed sites for Pearson's. Respectfully, not true for a number of reasons. First, if we'll note, the Pearson property is closer to a number of amenities than are the parking lots, as certainly the grocery stores are very closer there. There's a separate issue. At least 2 of the parking lots here are presently in the 101 corridor. They essentially sit in the median. You're essentially asking children to come out and play in the median of a freeway. And no one seems to take that into account where they're placing these properties. If you were looking for a worse place to place property for low-income people, it would be hard to imagine than where it presently is. I think Mr. Slattery said it best in his Outpost article, where he said that, you know, the city was baking its cake and eating it too. they are getting a tremendous deal here. They are getting nearly twice the units that they presently could build on the parking lots. They are moving, they are avoiding destroying the downtown parking. They're putting their property in a better site than it presently is. This one realistically is a no-brainer. I'm surprised that the city even blinks on this one. There was one question by Ms. Smith's indicating that there somehow was some gamesmanship being played on the lots. Well, just look at the lot sizes. Jiminy Christmas, the lot sizes for the Pearson property are nearly double that of the parking lots. There's no game being played on the number of properties that can be developed.
Thank you very much. Your time's up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is the last four digits are 2122.
Good evening, everyone. This is Uriah Driscoll again. We own about 2/3 of an acre commercial property in downtown Eureka, and it is very important that parking is maintained. And at first, and much of this proposal I very much like. I think that it is a good idea as far as being able to build that many units. I don't know all the details. A previous speaker, I thought, made a good point about it is close to the Winco and some of those other businesses there. So there is some definitely really positive aspects of this. But one red flag that I have a little bit of an issue with is that there is no assurance that the parking lots that we would try to preserve for local businesses would be maintained as parking lots or replaced in some way to accommodate parking, whether it's a car garage or whatever. So while it may be desirable for people who can walk to be able to walk from place to place to get things done, there is no real grocery stores downtown. And I'm not sure that that's really where we need to be putting families and much more housing. There is no way that businesses are going to survive with only people that live in that area. The businesses definitely need people coming in, as I mentioned before, to the county seat to do their business, whether at the courthouse, the city hall, or just at some of the other private businesses. So this is a tough one, you guys. I think in general, it's a really good idea. I sure would like to see that there was some assurance that the parking would be maintained. But I'm also very much in favor of affordable housing, and I think that area, the Pearson swap, could indeed be even more desirable than the downtown locations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Keenan.
Hello. Let's see, can I take my hand down? Hi. So yeah, thanks for hosting public comment on this item. I just wanted to kind of offer some reflections. Most of them have really been said, but echo that point that was articulated earlier about there's the number of units, and then there is, of course, the fact that not all units are created equal. And thinking about living in a walkable place, a place that is actually built to be able to get yourself to multiple destinations by walking, versus a place that is really constructed for cars. And I feel like Broadway is perhaps one of the clearest examples of a roadway in our community that is for cars. If you haven't gone out on a walk and walked Broadway from end to end, I highly recommend that you do, because it is an informative experience. Yeah, I mean, walkable places are where economic vitality is. Like if you look at the revenue that's collected from cities in walkable places versus car-centric places, like it's not even close. It's a place that is pleasant to live. You can go among places. Looking towards the future, I mean, we are already in the midst of a climate crisis. We can. I just think that there has to be the vision towards towards a different future, and really designing for people to be able to go to places in other means. And I didn't think that does mean bolstering transit. I think that does mean creating safer pathways for bicycle and walking, car shares, blah, blah, blah. There are many, we can experiment with all the different ways, but I think that maintaining that true north towards that vision, yes, these are incredibly valuable properties that the city has. Those are right in the heart of town. I think that the public benefit of being able to have far more residents have easy access to all the amenities of downtown Eureka would be a tremendous boon. That is basically all I wanted to add. Thank you to staff, and thank you to City Council for considering comments.
Our next speaker is Stevie Luther.
You're muted. No, we can't hear you, but it doesn't look like you're muted. You have somebody after you. Why don't we come back to you and you can log out and log back in? Does that work? And then let's go to the next person and we'll get Stevie.
Our next speaker is Ashton.
Ashton?
They're unmuted also.
They're unmuted. Are you trying to speak, Ash? Oh, I guess you can't.
Yes.
You can turn on your camera maybe, and you could wave possibly.
I don't want to.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Thanks.
Oh, great. I just wanted to bring up the seemingly extreme geologic conditions of the potential Pearson site. It sounds like there have been kind of some reviews of this site, but it's unclear to me whether or not there's been a geologic study. Considering that it's on an extremely sloped site with unknown soils, it does not appear to be as developable as suggested. The development of this proposed lot will propose increased liability and cost to any developer, which may delay or even potentially fail to meet the housing unit needs. And so, I'll just end there and just raise concern about the geologic conditions of that site.
Thank you. And Stevie, are you back?
Okay.
Are you trying to speak? Yeah, do you want to try to call in? Do you see the number at the bottom of the screen? You can call in. That's what I was wondering. I think he just logged off. We'll give him one more second. I was thinking about that and then coming back for one. So I think this is what we'll do while he's trying to get back in. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? We take a longer break, but it's almost time to call a longer meeting. So we'll take 5 minutes, ask Mr. Luther to hold on until we get back. We'll hear from one more person, and then we'll bring it back for comments. let's go ahead and start the meeting again. Councilmember Bowers and Castellano, are you here? And did we get Mr. Luther back? Hey, Leslie. No, Mr. Luther? Okay.
Easy. Is Mr. Luther back on the call?
The council members should know that they are muted.
Oh, it's muted over here.
Oh.
I muted it for the break. So.
Okay.
Is Mr. Luther back on the call?
Okay, I will say that I don't know if he was speaking for HCOG, but we did receive a letter from HCOG today. I was wondering if you guys saw it. Okay.
I didn't. Could you summarize it?
The main concern from HCOG, I mean, it was pretty extensive, but it was about mostly the line item in the resolution that says parking is a necessity, and they wanted to take that out as a primary, which seemed like a pretty easy ask. And then they were just advocating for a longer, more involved process for public engagement.
Thank you. We got a lot of correspondence. I don't want to make it sound like I don't read my correspondence.
And it did come late today. I don't think it came until about 3 or 4. So, okay. Well, in that case, we will bring it back to council for discussion on this item and for recommendations. So, does anybody have anything they would like to mention? Councilmember Burgell, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to say that I appreciate all of the people that have spoken and the public comment. And I have talked to people who also were very disappointed in the process. And so I'm hopeful that we can look at that down the line in changing that moving forward. But there were some concerns that were brought forward in public comment that I just want to address. So when I look at the Pearson property, what I see is I see a location that is not on the 101. I see a location that is near an affordable grocery store. I see a location that is near 2 parks, Highland Park and then 2030 Park's a bit of a ways away, near Alice Burney School, which is a great school. They have great teachers over there. It's near the Vet Center, which is a resource. It also, according to Greg Pratt, Eureka Transit Service, those 2 corridors, Harris and Henderson, are some of the most well-used areas for the transit. So those are all benefits moving forward with this property. I hear the public, I hear the disappointment with the process. I can understand the frustration with that. We are moving forward with the 5th and D parking lot and the 6th and L parking lot, which are near downtown. We are moving forward with the 4th and G behind Lost Coast Brewery. We're looking at those things. And we are still continuing to look for other properties to develop. So, you know, though parking is not more important than people, it is a consideration. And, you know, we do have business owners that have worked very hard and do work very hard in our community. And I believe we need to support them as well in some of the things that they bring forward. So with that, I'm in full support of this project. I did talk with the city attorney and feel like some of the issues that were addressed are that we'll be okay with that. So with that, I fully support this, and I look forward to kids being not on the highway and kids being near a really quality school and parks and all those things that are important. And even, they'll have to cross the 101 to get to the trail, but there's that as well. Now, all those things being said, I would like us to have some considerations on sidewalks moving forward, and bike and pedestrian facilities for people, because safety is critical. We already know that. We know what happens on Broadway. And so I think it's going to be really important for having families live over there to make that happen. So I support this, and I'll let someone else talk.
Do we have any other comments? Councilmember Moulton and then Arroyo.
I guess I have a question, if that's all right. I was the matter of geological concerns, the fact that this property hasn't been developed up till now. Sorry, can you address the geological concerns? I saw that you had the slope has been measured, but what about the soil quality?
So there hasn't been a geotechnical report, which is, I'm assuming, what this...
He has an answer.
Oh, there you go. Mr. Pearson could
Please.
answer that.
Thank you.
I stepped out for just a quick little phone call, and so I think I missed the closing opportunity to. Anyway, Mayor and Council, yeah, there's been two actual engineering companies that have reviewed the geotech. There's been soil borings and studies, and there's also soil borings and studies that were done on the motel or hotel building that's just to the north. It's now the Teen Challenge Men's Center. So they have a very good understanding of the soils there, and both the different engineering companies were supportive of building on the site. So that is not it was a concern that I had too. That's why I had two different engineering companies look at it, and they both had the same conclusion that it's good to build on. So
lovely, thank you.
And Mr. Pearson, we didn't have a caller, but that person was from HCOG. We got a letter from them today, and I'll forward it to you so you have the HCOG comments.
Okay.
I'm hoping that Mr. Luther's comments were going to kind of reflect that, so we didn't lose anything.
I'm not familiar with those comments, but look forward to getting them.
No, I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments of me while I'm here? And then I just could say a little word about things.
Oh, I had another question and a comment, but I can wait.
I think this is a great location, and it was brought up, Councilmember Burgell. There's so many things and amenities that are right there, not to mention a great sunset. And, we're a quarter mile from the VA clinic, a third of a mile to Alice Burney School. And we mentioned this. There's a bus stop right in front of the VA. They've got Dollar Tree. You can get your pharmaceuticals at the CVS, and then some basic foods. You got Winco. You can get, all kinds of things. Very close proximity. There's lots of restaurants as well. Then you can get down to Bayshore Mall. There's DMV right down there. So there's a lot of services. Let's see. I think the Social Security is in the Victoria Place. So there's a lot of services within, I would say, probably a third of a mile or less, 1,500 feet or so. So everything is really right there. It's really a nice location. I think some sidewalks would certainly, make that even better. But it's a great location. It's a great view. And my office currently is right there, and it's been a great neighborhood. So I think it's a good, I think it's a win-win. I'm kind of surprised by, all the negative comments, because I think the city's getting a heck of a deal being able to build more units in a better, safer location than what you're able to do now. Plus, we protect the parking for the different businesses that relied on that parking to be there. Businesses located there and property owners developed there with the understanding that those parking lots were going to be there to support them. And, having them go away, I think, is doing a disservice to your local business community, especially like the retailers. They're already competing against Amazon. I would suspect that most of the people that called in with negative comments probably have spent most of their shopping on Amazon, instead of supporting their local merchants. So if we make it even more difficult for people to shop their local merchants, you're not going to have any. And I think there goes, I just think that's a very sad thing for our community. They're important businesses. They employ people here, and I think they need to be supported. So I appreciate you considering that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moulton, you had more.
Just a bit more, thank you. I just want to second or third the comment about that being a great place to have access to services. The house, I find the neighborhood very walkable. I can grocery shop, can go to the parks, schools. It's I think definitely has plenty of access to services and transportation. Of course, more sidewalks would always be lovely. Stole my thunder there with Social Security. That was a good one too. And of course, the lots downtown were never going to stay parking. I mean, they were going to be developed into, they were going to be gone in the first place. So whether or not the developer turns it into parking or turns it into housing or turns it into something else, it wasn't going to stay parking under the city's purview. So the idea that giving it to a developer and then whether or not they keep it as parking is relevant, I don't see that as part of the conversation. I wanted to ask about the apparent inequity in the indemnity clause, if someone could clarify that for me.
Well, I mean, so we talked about a little bit in my presentation, and I'm sure that City Attorney Black can elaborate. City Attorney Black has reviewed this and is comfortable with it. The concerns, are basically addressed, I believe, in the exit clauses. So when we go through and do, it's very clear that the Pearson property has a lot more studies that were done on it. The city has done a phase 1 on the 5th and K parking lot here, and those phase 1s, if found to have an issue, then would go to a phase 2. So that phase 1 does a preliminary look at like all of the history of the site, what was back on the site back in the day, all of those things to determine whether or not there's a potential. And if there is a potential for some environmental hazards, then you go on to a phase 2. Staff has gone through and looked at old Sanborn photos and looked at the development of these sites. We're very comfortable with where we're at with our parking lots and don't feel there's any sort of environmental issues that'll come up, but we'll do further investigation during that 60-day period. And if there's anything found that we're concerned about, then we can either address it or change course at that time. But right now we feel very comfortable with it. I don't know if City Attorney Black has.
I'll just be very brief with this. The key thing is that there is an investigation period, and the results of the investigation would permit either Pearson or the city to extricate itself from this agreement. During the indemnification with respect to the Pearson property provides that they will indemnify for conditions up to the date of close. In other words, they have to be pre-existing to the date of closing. I think the issue is that the Pearson property, the city property, is going to have essentially a later date of transfer, probably to a purchaser that has an interest in preserving the parking. And so there's that period of time, it's a relatively short period of time, where Pearson will be holding the property, and conceivably there could be an environmental discovery or even an environmental event that they would not be willing to assume the total financial risk of. And so the city is indemnifying them up to that point.
Thank you.
So it's a disparity in when the properties will actually transfer and when the liability of each of us will end with respect to that property.
I see. Thank you. That makes it clear.
I just want to let council members Bauer and Castellano know I see you, and Councilmember Arroyo is after Councilmember Moulton, but I know it feels like lonely out there. I'm not looking, so.
We know you're here. I just wanted to say that I like this. I want to meet some new neighbors. Thank you.
Councilmember Arroyo.
Is it at 9:30 that we have to extend the meeting? Okay. So, yeah, I imagine you're keeping an eye on that. Thank you. Yeah, we had a long wait earlier in the meeting for folks to get with the mask requirements. So we're a little behind. But I had a couple of comments. For me, this is all about whether we can get more units out of the properties, whether it is reasonable for people to live on buildable locations in town, and whether, to some degree, whether housing is equitably distributed around the city. And when I look at the proposed locations, I kind of made my own little map here where I highlighted and colored in, all the locations. And our housing element is very robust, but in describing these, but I wanted to kind of look at where they're located around town. And there was so much concentration of properties in the Old Town area, which I once lived in Old Town, actually for many years of my time in Eureka, and loved. I also feel that there are different parts of town that fit different families and different needs. And so while a lot of people have talked about how wonderful it is to live there, I will say that when I look at the transportation incident mapping system crashes, there are a lot along Broadway and 4th and 5th, but there actually seem to be a bit more along 4th and 5th. So when I think about transportation safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, presuming that a lot of folks who live in housing that has limited parking may choose not to have a car or may not have a car, those Old Town locations actually do concern me, as does anything along Broadway. And while there's still access to Harris and Henderson from this site, and that could and should be improved as part of the project, I would also have those concerns about safe crossings on Broadway, and we've been in conversation with Caltrans to really improve that stretch of Broadway, and ask for them to really work with us to improve transportation safety there, especially for bikes and pedestrians. So that remains a top concern, but it also does in Old Town, where we see a bit higher of a rate of pedestrian and bicycle collisions from the data that is available now. Now, I don't see this year's data, and the 2019 data is provisional. So I know we've all seen an increase along Caltrans right-of-way, but that doesn't necessarily tell us that living in Old Town is more safe than living between Harris and Henderson on Fairfield. So I'm not really buying the transportation safety angle of it. I do think properties that we've identified in the Old Town and downtown area, not a lot in a lot of other parts of town. And as others have said, it's a wonderful neighborhood to live in. I also live a few blocks away, and I enjoy going to the Eureka Mall for my shopping, and think there are a lot of assets there. There's a lot of community gardens in the neighborhood. There are schools, there are a lot of community assets there. So I sort of rankle at the idea that Old Town is somehow more desirable to live in than the part of town we're talking about with this property. Honestly, it seems a little bit, short-sighted to say that. And I find it to be an appealing prospect. Another thing I find appealing about this possibility is that it's a big contiguous property. So these smaller properties, while they have, with the floor area ratio variances, they could have more units than we initially anticipated, at least, or initially identified. There are still limitations with their either setbacks or not having windows on some sides of the property based on their proximity to other lots. And this lot along Fairfield would offer us the opportunity to, I think, design the location for more types of units, more amenities potentially for people because it's that large contiguous property versus some small ones that are broken up. A couple of notes that I scrawled to myself here, just a sec. I do think it would be imperative to improve the bike and pedestrian infrastructure along both sides of the property, and including the segment that I know Mr. Pearson is planning to relocate his office to across the street, which does not, to my knowledge, have sidewalks along Harris. It doesn't have sidewalks currently, so I would want to make sure that part of that agreement would include that we would construct sidewalks even. I don't know if that was discussed at all.
I don't think it would be a part of this, but it's definitely something that we could do as either an RFP process for the property or part of working directly with the developer.
Sure.
The sidewalk does start just up
Yep.
the street from there, so it's not a big stretch of sidewalk to connect.
Yeah, it's like one half a block of between the existing property, and then there's no sidewalks on the west north facing side of the street to connect the property down to Broadway either. So that would, I think, be a need. So, I'd certainly want to make sure that we were planning to address that, that there be a sidewalk and, hopefully even a way for bicyclists to cross to the bike lane that's on Harris and on Henderson. So I'm not sure how much conversation has happened around that.
So I think those are all things that can come up as a part of it, whether it's the RFP or it's working individually with a developer.
Sure.
I think that, we would obviously speak with traffic engineering to make sure that there is a crosswalk up on Ocean there that people could go on as well, and making connectivity to there through the bike. Harris may be a little bit further distance to get up there, but I know that Harris would be kind of a blind corner there, and putting a crosswalk there probably wouldn't be the best.
Yeah.
Figure out a good location.
Yeah, there is a need there for sure. When you get down to a couple of those spots, I can see why there would be concern about them, and they are tricky. And right now, there aren't a lot of pet and bike incidents there, in part because there's no reasonable place to cross, but people would need that. So I'm hopeful that would actually spur us to work with Caltrans on improving those crossings, which are much needed anyway. Someone brought up neighborhood input and concern, and I am curious about thoughts from people who live really close to the project. The plan was always for that to be developed into apartments, or maybe not always, but at least in the recent future. So while we're talking about like 108 units, maybe more, hopefully more, there was always going to be quite a number of units there. So I'm not necessarily thinking that would keep us from developing there. So those were all the things that I think are positive about it. I can understand, frankly, people's frustration that the city would appear to be giving in to anti-affordable housing perspectives. And that's not necessarily what I think is happening, but I can understand how people would perceive it that way and be frustrated by it. But throughout this process, our city manager has voiced, if you provide an alternative, I'll consider it. And I would say that as a council, and disperse housing throughout more of the city. I was always interested in considering that. So now my question is, how can we ensure that the process steps that we take to get there are adequate? I know one of our public commenters did not feel that the housing element not being updated first was going to work. And I also heard from several people who couldn't be at this meeting that they were upset that this important topic was scheduled 4 days before Christmas, which I think is a fair point. So all that said, I know we're a little bit under the gun on time, but I don't think we're so under the gun that we couldn't continue the conversation till January 4th to allow a few more people to provide their input. But that said, I'm conceptually in support of this decision because I think it's ultimately good for the city and good for the city residents. Yes.
So I just want to be clear that everything that we've been doing along this process has been in consultation with HCD. We've had meetings with HCD back in May, back in August, back in October, and more recently a lot of email communication. After the letter was sent, we set out a framework and a timeline that we would stick to, and we're keeping to that timeline. We did talk about this being the decision date for this item. I don't know how they would react if we did postpone it. I don't know. But I just want to be clear that the concerns that were expressed by some of the commenters about where we're at with HCD, I think council is aware that staff has been in communication with them and has actually received correspondence back saying, okay, proceed accordingly. So they've been kept abreast of this, as well as the resolution was approved by surplus land at HCD. So we have taken those measures and we have kept in contact with them.
I definitely hear that, and I appreciate that we are trying to expedite the process in keeping with what we told them. I can't see any possible reality in which delaying till January 4th to make a decision on this would keep us from getting HCD's blessing. It is the holiday season, so I think people generally expect that anywhere between mid-December and early January is sort of a bit of a tough time to get public input. And I think this is an important enough topic and question for our community that I think it deserves a little bit more opportunity for input, because we got while I think the process was transparent, it wasn't getting very much attention when we were first identifying these lots for development, or at least it wasn't getting attention from people who had concerns about it. Then people learned about it and felt concerned. So I think learning from that, I would like to provide one more opportunity for people to weigh in so that they feel like we didn't, quote, rush this through on December 21st, 5 days before Christmas. That's all. I think we can continue to have the same valuable conversation and hopefully come to a good decision about it, even if we wait till January 4th.
So obviously that's council's decision. I would say that the public process that went through for the previous development, like I said, had public noticing to all of the adjacent neighbors, both for the lot line adjustment, both for the easement vacation, both for them securing the property from the city, as well as the design review. Mm-hmm. So that has always happened. I know it changes the makeup of the development. It's more units, definitely. The one concern that staff would have is that we did receive a pretty stern letter from HCD. The concern that I would have, staff would have, would be that doing this by December, that triggers that 60-day inspection period. It moves it out that much further. Everything from that point forward moves out. And our commitment to updating the housing element, I think it would definitely jeopardize that as well, because the would need to be set in order for us to move forward on that. That's the only concern I have. I don't work for HCD, so I don't know what their reaction would be.
So I am going to turn over to you guys, but I wanted to second what Natalie said. I feel like I'm also in support of this project. I've been very excited about it, but I feel like when we're talking about trading away 3 pieces of property as well as getting this new property, I would like people to have more than one meeting opportunity to be able to share their opinion. There's the kind of the law of what we need to do, and then there's the perception of engagement and perception of transparency that I think I would just like it to be a little bit clearer. But like everybody else, I've been really excited about this project and the opportunity for it. But I do understand and have had a lot of calls about people who feel like this has been done in a way that's been less than transparent So we don't know how HCD will respond, but I do feel like HCD is an agency that respects and appreciates transparency and engagement. So I'm hoping that that would be an acceptable thing for them as well. Councilmember Castellano and then Councilmember Bauer.
Okay, let's see. Well, and according to the letter from HCD, that doesn't need to be updated until the end of the first quarter. So I think even, to the point of postponing one meeting, I would imagine it could still be completed within their desired parameters. Let's see. So I have lots of thoughts on this because it's related to housing, and spent the last week or so really thinking a lot about this and doing quite a bit of research. Firstly, I will just say that I have some personal frustration just because I think that I would have appreciated the opportunity to discuss this on council prior to the negotiations, because I feel like a lot of this input, like, well, if we had more time, it would be great to consider these things. And now I feel like we're kind of up against this line that I think we could have brought this before council 3 or 4 months ago. So I'll just say that respectfully and appreciatively. Secondarily, I do agree that we should strike point number 1 in the resolution, stating that properties provide needed parking to local businesses and use of the properties for local housing will have detrimental effect on the local economy. There are a lot of potential ways of looking at that saying that housing could have positive effect on the local economy, and I think that's at the very least speculation, or it perhaps hasn't been fully researched. Let's see. If we do continue this, I would recommend to tighten up the indemnity clause. And I guess I want to start by saying, after those things, that our communities and the world is in a state of change. There are pretty extraordinary environmental situations and concerns that we need to address, and that it's our responsibility as elected officials to address. I think that, and housing is within that. I agree that housing near the Winco area is also good and great, but I disagree that housing in downtown is bad or not good. I think there are many types of housing that many people desire. I think that housing in the Winco area is inevitable to some degree, and so one of my concerns in kind of trading these lots is that we're overall, in the grand scheme of things, whether it's Eureka housing or hospital housing or penthouses or whatever, we're kind of losing a total sum of housing or potential housing. Do I think that there may be concerns about parking that need to be addressed? Yes. We haven't really completed a full scope parking study. I think it would be wiser to actually kind of readdressing the housing element to change maybe the ordering of how we release the housing, or maybe even like take one of these 3 lots off the list for now. It could still be put back on, because it looks like with the 7th and Myrtle possibilities, the transit center sites, that we could have an and there's other potential developments in the works too, right? That we could still meet our housing goals. I also think with a potential looking at the zoning of the Winco area, that could help to meet the housing goals. I could be wrong, but as far as I know with RENA, we don't have to personally provide all of the housing, but we have to make sure that it can be built within the city. I also think there could be the potential to collaborate with the county on parking solutions, as I know the county has a great need to address parking as well. And that's something that we haven't talked about and hasn't moved forward, but I think it could be an important way of really looking at business needs around parking. it would be great if those geotech specs are provided with the closing if this does move forward. If Mr. Pearson is willing, I would highly encourage that. It could certainly be useful for the city. And, you know, I also think that more customers in proximity to local businesses could help local businesses thrive. Again, you know, I just think that, and finally, I'll say that one of my concerns with this trade is that by doing so, I didn't imagine the city having access to land downtown, potentially again, to getting more land downtown, right? And, you know, so perhaps housing or parking becomes privatized. Perhaps, you know, the city is paying to park on the lot proximate to City Hall. Perhaps, I don't know, like, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but, you know, like 5 McDonald's get built on those lots. You know, and I'm sure we have some control over that. But that, you know, I think in terms of actual planning for good living within cities, it would make sense to slow down the process around these lots and then focus on the ones in which there are fewer questions, so that we can really develop a more robust planning for how we want to live and how we want to address the changes that are happening in the world and in our communities in the future.
Can I also ask Councilmember Castellano, would you like to extend the meeting or make a motion to extend the meeting since you have the floor?
Sure, sorry. Since I just took up a lot of time speaking, I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting. We have a couple more things on here. How long do folks need? Another half hour?
We're gonna bump a couple of things. So we need to finish this, some more public comment. I would say 10.
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting until 10 p.m.
I'll second.
Everybody vote. Thank you. And now the very patient Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you. I was just going to can you hear me?
No, we need to actually say that we're going to extend the meeting. So.
You have to vote. A unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. Now you can go.
Good? Okay. No, I was, God, there's so much to say. I just, first I want to recognize that how interesting it is that this discussion isn't about, no, I don't want the housing in a particular location. It's about what's the best location. And in so many communities, there's a lot of NIMBYism. I don't want low-income housing near my property. So I want to recognize that it's really fun and interesting that we're having a discussion about what's the best location. And I want to second, fourth, fifth, you know, a lot of discussion about Winco's, that location next to having Winco and the VA and CVS, and it's a good location. And I think we all agree that it's a good location and downtown is a good location. But we're really coming down to what's the most expedient way to get housing, I think. And I think we all agree on that too, that we need housing fast. And it's a national problem that we don't have enough housing. How can we speed that process up? How can we have the most housing built possible in the shortest period of time? So, you know, it's tough. I see all sides of this. At the same time, I think if this property that we're talking about exchanging, you know, which has, I think, the same amenities as downtown properties, I don't see why we don't do it. I don't see why also that people would think it's worth potential litigation to fight this, and that kind of baffles me for our community. That it seems more that it's about people's feelings, like they think downtown is better, therefore it's the best solution, the best location. versus what's best for the community. How fast can we get housing, and how much housing we can develop. So, I don't know what else to say. I think a lot of it's been said. We all kind of agree that we need housing. We all agree that both locations are good, but I think it comes down to our personal beliefs of what's the best location. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the most important thing to consider. It's about units, it's about amenities, services, and I also, I haven't talked forever on this, but I also agree that more public input is better. But I will say that this is a common thing that we deal with when it comes to planning, community planning. It often seems like we hear that it's never enough. We've never had enough time to interact with the public, and I don't know when that becomes a limiting factor, but it slows down the ability for us to move along when there has been time. But I'll just say that I recognize it, that there is a need. People all want to have their input. I mean, the reason I'm not there in person is because of being with family. So maybe I'll leave it at that and see where we want to go. But I am supportive of this land transfer and what it can mean to the city and to the citizens. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So I will ask, does anybody want to make a motion? Councilmember Arroyo?
Can I make a comment before my motion?
Got the floor.
Okay. I think the thing that's different about this is this property was not in our housing element, so it didn't go through the public review and the public process that did. This is unusual. We're not trying to hide the information from anybody, but to have it come forward just surely because of the timing that it came forward and during a holiday week when a lot of people are going to visit family for the first time in a couple. I just know this is an unusual holiday week for many folks. So I am supportive of this project, and I don't want to belabor the discussion too much, but I think it's totally fair to say that this process was not like the housing element process, where there were multiple public meetings, people got to weigh in. Now we're going to have to update the housing element again. And one thing that I really liked that I heard was Councilmember Castellano's recommendation that we potentially look at, or maybe, I don't remember who said this, but that we potentially look at moving up some of the other properties since we're going to be looking at our housing element again anyway. And I would love to use that as a way to show that we as a city are not trying to avoid developing housing throughout town. In fact, we have slated other properties in the Old Town area and downtown area for development. But these properties, there's this other alternative. So I think my recommendation will be to move this to January 4th because it's a different process than has happened for the other properties. And I think it's fair to give people that opportunity to weigh in. It sounds like many of us are in support. So I think it's helpful to have had a chance to discuss the merits of the project. But I just think it's not going to kill us to give it one more meeting for people to share their thoughts about this one, given that it's been a completely different process than the identification of other properties for our housing element for development. So I can put that into a motion that's my recommendation, that we bring this back for discussion at the January 4th meeting and discussion and, potentially adoption of the resolution, which would be a one meeting thing, right? It's like a one and done.
The resolution does not take 2 readings.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. I've only been in this job for like 7.5 years. So that we bring it back at that meeting. because I've heard loud and clear the community concerns that when we talk about where we develop housing, people really want that opportunity to hear about it. There was an article about it today. Great. It's holiday week. Fair enough to, in my opinion, to say that we give people that extra chance. So that's my motion. So we defer to January 4th.
Councilmember Burgell?
I have a question about that. So, or maybe just a concern, or I'm not sure what I have about it, but I have something to say about it.
Well, I think just from a process standpoint, do we have to see if we can get a
I'll
second, then
second.
do discussion? Okay, you're going to second, now discussion. Go
Oh,
ahead.
wait. No, I'm not going to second.
Okay, I didn't think
I'm
you were
not
going
going to second with the amendment until I make my comment.
Okay, so let me see if somebody else wants to second or if it dies on the floor. Does anybody else want to second that motion to postpone it until next meeting? Councilmember Castellano?
I'll second it.
Okay, now we'll have discussion.
Okay. So January 4th is, it's 2 weeks away or whatever. But what I would like to remind everybody is that we are in a shelter crisis. We've been in a shelter crisis. And 2 weeks may not seem like a long time in the process. I agree the process was a mess this time. I've gotten lots of emails and conversations with people that have, I think many of the people that you guys have talked to probably, about this project. But the thing is that it's a good project. And I'm curious what would really change if we put it off until January 4th? I mean, we would hear public comment. However, I've personally have heard a lot of public comment. We had an absolute lot of public comment tonight. I understand it's a holiday week, but we are in a shelter crisis. Not only are we in a shelter crisis, that shelter crisis impacts our businesses in Old Town. We got people walking the streets, and I get so tired of us putting things off so that we can just, continue to talk about it. Talk about what? We all have agreed that we like the project. We've had public input. I think that the public, we should have some meetings, some educational meetings, and next time we need to really do a better job of engaging the public. But I'm ready to move forward today. I just feel like I don't know what 2 weeks is, what the difference 2 weeks is going to be. We talk about belaboring. I want to hear public comment. Call me, come talk to me. But I don't support putting it off. I think it's time that we start moving forward with this housing stuff. We've got Lincoln. We don't know what's going to happen, how long this process is going to go on after. I just have real concerns about waiting. I mean, that seems to be a problem that we've had as a city for a lot. We just put things off, and I'm done putting things off. I think it's important that we move forward. I understand that people are upset about the process. I don't appreciate the process either, frankly. But that's my 2 cents about it. And with that, I guess I'll make a motion unless there's further comment.
Wait, okay, now I have to be reminded. So an alternative motion, or do we vote on the first motion first? And then you can do an alternative and then we vote on the first.
This motion is a little different. It's a procedural motion.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes referred to as a privileged motion, and you have to vote on it separately.
Okay, so we could vote on that first and then she could make a motion afterwards?
Yeah, if there's no process to do a substitute motion on this because it's a motion to postpone.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second,
And
so we'll have to follow
postpone to a
through.
date certain. So if this is voted down, there could be another motion to postpone to a different date. Otherwise, you just move ahead with the substance.
May I respond to the question? I'm not sure if it was a rhetorical question or not, though. Did you want me to respond to what the benefit of waiting would be?
It was a rhetorical question.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you certainly can if you wish, but it was rhetorical.
It is still discussion time, so. Are we ready to vote then on the motion to postpone until January 4th?
Councilmember
Scott.
Bauer has his hand up.
Yeah, real quick. I'm just wondering. I'm torn. I'm just wondering if, let's say, this motion doesn't pass. another motion comes up to, move forward with the plan as written, and that doesn't pass, then what does that leave us? Maybe that's a procedural question more than, or something for us to think about. I hate to see this opportunity just flat out die for lack of consensus. So maybe that's a question within a question, but I'm just throwing it out there.
I think I can answer that.
Okay.
If
go for it.
the motion passed by Councilmember Arroyo doesn't pass, and the next motion is to approve staff's recommendation, and that doesn't get approved, I think that's the scenario you're saying, right, Councilmember Bauer? If that's the case, then this dies, and then staff moves forward with the existing properties that we have, and we start going through the housing element update with those properties.
Okay. Councilmember Arroyo?
Even though it was rhetorical, I'll still respond to that question. So we had multiple housing element meetings, right? 3, 4 that were part of adopting the housing element, maybe more.
Well, it was the same amount as we did for the general plan.
Right. So a lot.
It was all wrapped up into the general plan, which the zoning for this property was wrapped up in that same process.
And then when we issued the RFP for each batch of properties, there were public meetings, and for the ones that raised these 3 lots to the public's concern, there were 3 meetings, right?
Prior to the RFP going out, there was 1 meeting with council to approve the RFP.
Mm-hmm.
After the RFP was awarded and given to Link, then they, on their own volition, held public meetings to talk about the project.
I'm talking about the other 3, the 3 that we're talking about trading.
The ones that we had with the business owners.
Oh, well, things have changed since then. So the 3 meetings were based on 3rd and E, 5th and D, and 4th and G.
Okay.
So there hasn't been a specific meeting for 5th and K. There hasn't been a specific meeting for 5th and H.
Okay.
Those meetings were based on specific properties and those
Gotcha.
property owners, which we would do the same for this, is we would go out and notify the property. If council approved this, then staff would go out and notify the people within a certain range and hold a public meeting similar like the 3 that were held in May.
So I guess my point in saying this is there might not have been the same and consistent number of meetings about each of these properties, but there were quite a lot of meetings about the whole suite of properties that that we were considering under the housing element for development of housing, where people would have had a chance, if they were monitoring the housing element, to weigh in. And in this case, this is the first and only public meeting that we have had about this property and this arrangement, which, while I think it's beneficial, I think it's a little bit lopsided when it comes to the public process. So if everyone is like totally on board tonight to make a decision about this change during a holiday week, I'm not necessarily opposed to making that decision tonight, but I'm advocating for one more opportunity for public input because it's an unusual departure for the process.
So I will say to that the housing element as proposed was unusual because those properties that were being proposed for housing were parking lots that were zoned downtown, the vast majority of them, some downtown west. So when we went through that process and it was a part of the housing element, we didn't own any property that was residential, and I don't know what that process would have been like if we owned property that was residential, because I don't know if we'd have to go through that same process because it was deemed to be residential through the general plan process. So while these properties weren't in our housing element, because we obviously didn't own them and the like, but the similar process for the general plan that went through, along with the meeting at the Wharfinger to talk about infill and changing our zoning to make sure that we have more density. I mean, these properties would fall under that. It's just that the city didn't own them. And I think the housing element part of it was, it's never been done in the past where we've taken parking lots and turned them into affordable housing.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get what you're saying. I'm making a point that this is different than us making a decision about property we own, city property we own. This is about a switch with private property. It's different from anything that's come before, and there wasn't any public meeting process for people to engage in until now. So that's still where I'm going with this. And the other thing that I think could come back on January 4th would potentially be information from staff about what other properties we could move up in the process. Like if we're going to change our housing element anyway, great. And we all recognize that there's a shelter crisis and it's urgent that we build more housing. Great. What other properties could we expedite development of?
So
I would love to hear that.
So that's the thing. I mean, like I said, without wasting too much effort, we're going to have, if we include the other properties over time, at least 8 or 9 properties that potentially could get onto the housing element. All of those properties still need to comply with the surplus land legislation. So while staff, I believe what Councilmember Arroyo is getting at is we could take one of those properties, go through that surplus land process, whether it's exempted or whether it has to go 60 days, whatever it may be. We could go through that for individual. Staff felt it was a lot more efficient to get a list and have an inventory, deal with that surplus land for all of those properties in one fell swoop, and then move forward. I will also say that once we do update our housing element, there is, and I know Councilmember Castellano related to that, you have the end of the quarter, which would be the end of March. There is a requirement that once we do make the updates, that prior to submitting it to HCD, that there's a 30-day public review of that housing element, so that takes away a month in and of itself. And so that's why this time frame, and I can't speak for HCD as to what will happen if council makes a decision to postpone this, but we could find out if that's the decision, what their response is.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Burgell.
So I'm curious, I hear what you're saying about the public property and this, but I am curious, how many meetings did we have regarding the Pearson property? How many public meetings did we have? How much?
So there was a minimum of 4 public meetings. Well, more than that, because I think the lot line adjustment had to come to council, so that would be 2 for that. I think the vacation of the easement, that'd be 2 for that. At least 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 6 public meetings related to the previously proposed development or some phase of that development, whether it, the lot line adjustment, that was one that took planning and council. Then there was the vacation of the easement that took planning and council, and then there was the giving up of our property that was planning and council, and then there was the design review, which was one more meeting. So
Okay.
I would guesstimate.
Then secondly, were there 3 public meetings about the parking lots and the discussion of the swaps? Not necessarily predicting this particular property, but in talking about if we can find better properties, or if we can find different properties that work and that are available, that we would be willing to consider those and move those forward. Was that 3 meetings or was it 2?
Obviously, it was 3, but it wasn't specific to any sort of swap. It was basically that we would look at alternatives, including up to trading property with property owners.
Okay. But it was discussed at those meetings.
The concept of it, yes.
Yeah. And then it's been in the outpost a few times.
The transfer has been once. I don't know if they reported on the property on the alternatives. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, you would, but I believe it happened when those 3 meetings were happening and people were very
That could have been
during those meetings. I guess my point being is that we've done several meetings on this property with the neighbors, with the people that surround the area. We've had discussions, be it with only businesses, regarding the link properties and how, we were willing to talk with different business owners and if that worked out, not business owners, property owners, for potential swaps. So we did have those conversations. So there was a lot of information for the public to engage in. Now, I agree with you. We did not have any idea or any clue that it was one of those swapped properties. We didn't know that at the time. We didn't know that when we were discussing the housing on that property. What we did know, though, was that that property, by passing what we did pass to create more housing on that property, that was going to be beneficial to our community. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I get complaints regularly about houseless people, people unable to find housing, all of these different things. And I think expediency, I know it's 2 weeks, but 2 weeks is 2 weeks. And I feel like for me, that people can certainly still comment. I think that we need to tighten up on our process for the next available properties. We still have in Old Town, we have whatever they were. What were they? 6th and, what did I write them down at? 6th and L, so they'll be downtown. We have that property coming forward. We also have the property at 5th and D coming forward downtown. We have the potential of the HTA property downtown. I just feel this is an issue of expediency. This is an issue that we have been discussing for quite a long time. We have a lot of people that can't afford housing here in our city. We have a lot of people on the streets that can't afford housing in our city. And I just feel like...
Can I just ask, is there anybody who does not feel ready to vote on this motion? Does everybody have enough information? Okay. Can we vote on the motion to move it, and then we can move on to the next motion if it passes or doesn't pass?
Councilmember Castellano?
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer?
No.
All right, everybody else vote.
Are you? Let's see, somebody's showing up as Bauer on here. Must be.
Is it me?
I think so.
Oh,
okay.
vote on the wrong one.
No, I've been pressing this one.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. So,
Do you want me to press Bowers too?
no, I got it. Okay. So 2 yes votes. Council members Bauer, Burgell, and something's not right here. Sorry. Castellano is yes. Moulton is yes. So all of these are goofy for some reason.
You want to do a verbal roll
Okay.
call vote?
Yes, I'm going to do a verbal call.
Okay.
Alrighty. Councilmember Castellano.
Aye.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
No.
Councilmember Burgell.
No.
3 yes votes. Councilmember Burgell and Bauer dissenting. Motion carries.
All right. So it looks like then we will be bringing this back on January 4th. Councilmember Moulton?
I just wanted to second, because I know I don't need to make this amendment, but I want to agree to strike the statement about parking being good for the economy and low-income housing or affordable housing not being good for the economy. That statement 1, I don't think that's well supported. Thank you.
Do you need a vote, or can that just
I
be
think it's just-
direction to do that before the next time?
Council should know that was put in by our legal counsel who drafted that, not City Attorney Black.
Okay.
Drafted that resolution.
And if there's anything I can do to help you with HCD, I will be happy to take all of the blame for council's decision and say that you fought to try to keep us on
I will
schedule.
forward you all of the correspondence.
Please
nah,
do.
Just joking. Staff will take care of it.
Yes, we want that.
And we are very much looking forward to also the opportunity for this, and grateful that people came forward to make the offer. So everybody who is involved, I want you to know that we're all very grateful. Just want to make sure everybody's got their piece to say. All right. And yet it's 10:04 and we are not done. We have one more item, which I think will go relatively quickly. We have a public comment. And so can we extend the meeting for just a couple more minutes?
I move that we extend the meeting to 10:30. Hopefully we won't need all that time.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Everybody vote.
Oh, we have to verbally.
Unanimous yes vote.
Oh, verbally vote.
Aye.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
Aye.
All right. So now we are moving on to item E2 state oh, wait, no, wait. Sorry. I flipped far back on my agenda. The bill number 1007 CS, regulation of storage and handling of coal on city-owned properties. City Attorney Black.
Mayor and council members, at your previous discussion of this item on December 7, you directed that the appeal process from the application of this ordinance be modified to include much more extensive involvement of the city council and the ability to appeal from the city manager to the city council. That has been elaborated a bit with some timelines involved, but also granting appeal rights to the public in general and to you as members of the city council. In other words, any one of you, if you disagreed with the city manager's decision, could bring the matter up, and the city clerk would then schedule an appeal hearing. The appeal, as put forth in the revised ordinance, is a de novo hearing, meaning that you would hear the matter from scratch. You would not necessarily grant deference to the city manager's decision. And so the outcome of an appeal would depend on 3 votes of the city council.
All right. Any questions about the changes to the ordinance? All right. Any public comment on this item? It looks like we have a couple.
A. Christensen.
Are you there, A. Christensen? I think she just went away.
All right. How about Karen Underwood?
Good evening, council members. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Well, I will be quick. I'm calling on behalf of the Humboldt Trail Council, and we just wanted to call and thank the council and your staff for bringing this ordinance forward, clarifying the appeal issue, and hopefully passing it this evening. Thank you for your efforts in keeping our citizens and our environment clean and healthy. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment on this item?
I don't see any.
All right. Seeing none, I will bring it back for comments. Councilmember Burgell.
Thank you.
I saw Scott has his hand up too.
Oh, you can go first.
Okay. Councilmember Bauer, we'll let you go first. She's been so patient.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm satisfied with the changes. I think they're offer up a reasonable process for appeal, and I feel like the city council has an opportunity to deal with it if such an appeal were to happen. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to make the recommendation, and we'll still have discussion, right?
Make the motion.
I make the motion. Okay, make the motion to waive full reading, read by title only, and introduce bill number 1007-CS, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Eureka, adding sections 94.60 through 94.67 of the chapter 94 of the Eureka Municipal Code regarding prohibition of the storage and handling of coal and petroleum coke on city-owned property.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on this item? Councilmember Burgell.
I just wanted to thank you, City Attorney Black. Thank you, City Attorney Black.
I'm sorry.
For clarifying this. I said
was-
thank you
for
for
great.
making the clarifications. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. With that, let's everybody vote.
Verbally or?
You want to do a verbal roll call again?
So that's messed up. Sorry. Councilmember Castellano.
Thank you. Also, and I.
Councilmember Moulton.
Aye.
Councilmember Arroyo.
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
Councilmember Burgell.
Yes.
Unanimous yes vote. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next we had the vacation dwelling unit management report on the agenda, which I'm very much looking forward to. We're going to move it to the mayor's report next meeting. We are going to do the same thing with the Humboldt Bay Fire year-end report. We're going to move that to the city manager's report so they can do it at the beginning of the meeting next time. I do want to make sure we don't have, does anybody have any future agenda items specifically for the next meeting? If it's for any future beyond that, just to hold on to it till the next meeting. But if you have to get something on the next one, let us know.
I would like to have a conversation about the cannabis. Ria Dell passed or did a resolution to support cannabis businesses, and I would like to look at that for us and see if we can't do the same.
Okay. You guys want to look at Rio Dell's and see if it's what we can translate to Eureka? We got a thumbs up from Councilmember Moulton.
Sure. I don't know what that entails, but sure.
Anybody else interested in looking at the cannabis resolution? Okay. There's a lot going on in that industry right now, so. All right. Now with that, I am going to open up public comment again, and I am going to thank you for staying for the whole meeting. I always wish I had a prize for the people that do it, but come on in.
Thanks for opening it up again. And good evening. We've been told to follow the science and to listen to the experts. Big pharma-funded bureaucrats, doctors, and scientists tell us the only solution to the pandemic is to lock down, mask up, and get vaccinated and boosted. They tell us to live in fear and resent our neighbors. I'm here to tell you that the science has been thoroughly settled and that following the advice of big pharma representatives is not only unscientific, but negligent, harmful, cruel, and inhumane. On top of that, they are in direct violation of the Constitution and the Nuremberg Code. They have destroyed lives, businesses, and communities. However, tens of thousands of brilliant and reputable doctors and scientists around the world have come to a very different consensus. They have found that early at-home treatment saves lives. Therapeutics work at preventing up to 85% of hospitalization and death. Vitamin D, C, and zinc can prevent and greatly reduce the severity of the disease. Masks are virtually useless at preventing transmission and increased bacterial infections. The PCR tests we use were never designed to diagnose disease. Over 40% of children have already recovered from COVID and now have robust immunity. Healthy children have a near 0% risk of hospitalization and death. From the former VP of Pfizer, he says for every one child's life saved by the vaccine, 100 will die from adverse reactions. COVID vaccines have caused millions of injuries and tens to thousands to hundreds of thousands of deaths in the United States alone. The current vaccines and boosters are designed for the original Alpha strain and offer little to no protection against infection, transmission, hospitalization, or death. The variants are the result of leaky vaccines, not the unvaccinated. And natural immunity is robust and durable and likely provides lifelong immunity to all variants. You're still immune to SARS-CoV-2 if you had SARS-CoV-1 15 years ago. Mandates, masks, and this experimental gene therapy are anti-science. If you do not recognize these facts, you are not following the science, but are following the corrupt dictates of corrupt oligarchs, whose only motivation is to keep the pandemic going indefinitely. I urge you to be on the right side of history, the Constitution, and the Nuremberg Code. We the people will be watching and will remember your choices in this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Ash on our Zoom call. Please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Ash. Before public comment was given, the boot to the tail end of your meeting, there were several members of the community expressing grievances in regard to the illegal, unconstitutional COVID mandates. These are illegal because, as previously stated, these illegal mandates were not put forth by our state's legislature. The precedent was recently set by a judge in San Diego who ruled against the local school system trying to push the vax mandates on the community's children. The backlash for this crime against humanity is going to be substantial. I don't think any of you have stopped to think about it, or you would already. Recently, a school put a warning out that K-12 students are suddenly at risk for heart attacks and other cardiovascular issues, going as far as hiring a cardiac specialist to have on hand with the school district's student health response. Locally, a 9-year-old being called a vaccine. While his death was labeled as a COVID death with comorbidities, it will not take many of these cases for parents to start demanding autopsies, bringing to light the health impacts of the treatments being called vaccines. You yourselves know all too well about the possible negative health impacts of these treatments being called vaccines. As an employee of yours was coerced into taking the first shot, had serious side effects, resulting in their health provider recommending against the second shot. In a heartless act, enforcing your illegal mandates put on your employees, the city of Eureka chose to fire this employee for not being able to receive the second dose. You have already chose to be on the wrong side of history, and every day you stay the course, the hole you dig for yourselves gets deeper. I urge you to take a long look in the mirror and contemplate a constitutional course of action and possible atonements for all the people you have personally wronged. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is that all for public comment? All righty. The last thing is council reports, but I do want to just give the city manager a chance if you have anything that you needed to let us know.
I know that we've been talking, and this will be really quick. I noticed that we've been spoke about the safe parking program a couple of months ago, and staff was going to bring something back before the end of the year. We're still working towards that. We're talking with the county, and we feel a program needs their participation in order to be successful. And we're also talking with Arcata about their program to see if we can help supplement it. So we're continuing to work on it. I just want to know that it will come back sometime in the near future when we have something that we feel is going to be successful.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to run through and give everybody a chance to give a report. And we'll start with Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you very much. Doing my normal talking with people in the ward, talking with business owners and old complex issues we have going on down there, and it's going to take a raft of complex solutions. So I'm always very happy to speak with anybody that has a perspective, and especially if they have suggestions. I participated in a 2x2 meeting with Eureka City Schools, got the opportunity to sit at a table and help communicate the feelings of the folks in the Second Ward. Those are always productive and interesting meetings. We discussed the disposition of the Jacobs campus, thinking about adding housing up into the First Ward right next to Second Ward there. Boy, I sure hope they find a way to hold on to that property, but we don't have a solid answer on what's going to happen to it just yet. I wanted to point out that we're all tired of the pandemic. There's a name for it, pandemic fatigue. I'm sick of talking about it too. And some businesses are taking this less and less seriously, despite the fact that common decency and state mandates require that people wear masks in public places. I'm the kind of person who will yell at someone in Winco about not wearing a mask, but if you're not quite as confrontational as I am, there is a way to report non-compliant businesses by phone anonymously in Eureka. That phone number is 707-441-4203. Parts of the county. That number is 707-476-2429. There's an article in the Times Standard where you can find the listings of the numbers for all over the county and all the different towns. I'm a sad that it's come to this, but we just all have to be in this together, even if it means wearing something silly over your face to keep other people from getting sick. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Royal.
Well, I had the honor of going to EPD to hand out the employee recognitions this year. Since we weren't able to do our employee recognition gathering, I got to hand out the appreciation recognition things that we do as a city, including, although I did not give the pins, but one of our staff members who was there gave out the pins recognized 5 years and 10 years and 15 years and so on of service. And it was cool to see those who have been longtime veterans at EPD. And then Humboldt Transit Authority approved at the urging of the county and specifically Supervisor Wilson over his time on the board. HTA is trying out a program for like municipal employees to use transit to get to and from work. So I realized it doesn't work for everyone. We'll be rolling that out and trying to see how that works out and if people use it, and then making adjustments to the schedule accordingly. And I didn't mention this in the Unmet Transit Needs hearing, but I will be bringing it to the HTA meeting. I did back from a community member saying it's a great idea to roll out that program, but that if buses don't run early enough and late enough for municipal employees to use them, then it's not that helpful. So we're aware that there's lots of interest in expanding the bus service times, and that's always feedback that comes in through these unmet transit needs hearings. There's a wide variety of reasons why we haven't been able to meet that unmet need, but certainly hearing it and recognizing that. And
Thank you very much. Councilmember Burgell.
So just a quick report from the zoo. Memberships are going through the roof. It's crazy this year. The zoo will be closed Christmas Day, but there is still time to get your membership. Today, I got to go to Shop with the Cop. I love Shop with the Cop. These kids, it's just so stinking sweet to see how happy they are, and what a delight for them to be with, law enforcement and fire department and different organizations. It was really a blessing to be there. It just was I can't even put into words what a gift it was. And on a more somber note, today is the Homeless Person Memorial Day, the solstice. And I'd like to honor an old friend of mine just briefly. And I'm just going to read a little bit that I wrote about him because he was an important person in my life. So anyway, his name was Max Green. And Max was the kind of guy who was lovable, drunk, or sober. They used to steal his shoes at Detox because he'd leave if they didn't. He'd come into where I used to work at the jewelry store to panhandle a buck or try to sell me some silly gadget. The most profound thing I ever heard him say was to a doctor after we took him to the emergency room. And the doctor said, "Maxie, you keep drinking like this, you're going to die." And this was the profound part. I'll never forget it. He said, Max said, "Doc, I've been dead for years." And when I see some of the people out on the street, this really touches my heart because this is real. Little did any of us know that Max would die out in the weeds from exposure and chronic alcoholism. Rest in peace, Maxie Green. Gone but not forgotten. He was January 19th, 1937 to July 5th, 2002. And he was a boxer. I have a great picture on my Facebook page if you want to see him. He was an amazing human being. So yeah. And then on a more positive note, last thing. I get to go on Thursday. I'm going out with the Cape team, and we're going to go deliver presents. I get to be an elf, and we're going to deliver presents to the Serenity Inn and the rescue mission. Always another great time. And I too got to honor the Cape employees and pin Jeff Davis, and it was I just so appreciate that team, Uplift, and all that they do. I mean, all of our employees and staff are just we're a family here, and I really need to say that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bauer.
Oh, thank you. You know, I think it's appropriate to just thank everybody, you know, city employees and my fellow council members for weathering what's been a tough year. Public service and city employees are doing public service. It's a thankless job, and it seems like in these days, there's a lot of animosity towards public servants. I was just reading about across the nation, public health officials retiring, quitting because of threats about basically them trying to do their jobs and protect the public's well-being. And, it kind of just struck a chord for me. Like, of anything, we should be grateful for our public servants. And you can throw nurses and firefighters and everyone else into that who keep doing their job through this pandemic. And I appreciate all of you, whoever's listening, to go thank their public servants, their public employees, because they're out there doing it, and they're taking heat for doing their job. So I just want to say that, and I hope the next year brings some light and people, thinking differently about how they treat public servants, because nobody should have to have to deal with something that they do out of the kindness of their heart and because they care about their community. So thank you all, and that's the way I'd like to end 2021, and hope 2022 is a much happier and fun time. So thanks.
Thank you, Scott, and congratulations to you and Katie for finishing your first year.
Yeah,
This is your
thank you.
1 year anniversary.
Yep, that's right.
Councilmember Castellano.
I'll keep it quick. And yeah, I appreciate all of you in your statement, Scott, and all of the work that everyone's doing. I am traveling with my husband and his family, so I'm not in town, but I'm continuing to participate. I did participate in several meetings related to lifting up the voices, art, and expressions of BIPOC youth in Eureka, and just I'm definitely excited to support that and support efforts for that to whatever extent I'm able. I've continued to attend meetings related to housing, and I want to invite everyone to a January 15th Wabash beautification event in front of Express Employment Professionals. And thanks to Robin Prasker for co-organizing that, and Shelley Nilsson for inviting us to use the front there of Express Employment Professionals to congregate in a COVID-friendly way. That being said, also, thanks to city staff. Sorry, I was out of town for the honoring, and I look forward to honoring you all as we move forward into 2022. So Happy New Year, everyone, and happy holidays.
All right. Leslie pretty much ended it how I was going to. Everybody have a good holiday, and we will see y'all next year.